All right, it's 4:30.
Agenda summary.
Great.
We're missing one. Sorry. All right, well. Responded to, he did say he was coming. But anything otherwise.
You go to Oregon,
Change the format of our.
you go to Oregon?
Actually, no, of all things, we went to a place in Maryland, spent time in DC. I have a African-American nephew and he decided he would host
That's so cool.
everybody. It was really cool.
Fun.
So we spent time in the Smithsonian museums. They've got one on African-American
Right,
history.
right.
And then they've got one on natural history that I haven't seen before. And walking the mall, it was very wonderful.
Okay, so you'll like it. So I went down to, I was in Socorro.
Okay,
Oh,
sorry.
that's okay.
We were just
We'll
giving a
talk-
report.
We'll talk about wildlife refuges later on.
Oh,
We
I
went to a
remember
nice
wildlife
refuge too.
refuge. Me too. Happy to swap stories. It is 4:32. We have a forum of Steve Evers joining us online, so we'll go ahead and get started. It was November 28th. We'll begin with citizens to be heard. We do have a public hearing on the agenda, so if you're here to make a comment for the public hearing, you'll have an opportunity then. If you would like to make any comments on anything that is not a public hearing and is on the agenda, or anything that is not on the agenda, now is your opportunity. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to a presentation on the Atlas Mills site future planning.
For us to come up here.
Do you
I
want
would
to-
like to participate, but I don't know if we're communicating.
Lori, are you trying to make a comment for the public hearing or for citizens to be heard?
I'm not sure. I just missed that because I'm sitting at Crescent Junction. My apologies. It's spotty service. If I have, the public comment is regarding which part? I'm sorry.
We have a public hearing to consider an ordinance to amend Article 3, 4, and 6 to establish noise mitigation measures. That's the public hearing. Is that what you're here to make a comment on?
It is.
Okay, do you think you'll have service to be able to hold your comment until the public hearing, or would you rather make your comment now?
Oh, thank you for asking that. Remind me is the public hearing after the planning meeting?
It's at the end of our agenda, but I'll tell you what, Lori, since you are dealing with spotty service, why don't we go ahead and enable you to make your comment now? And we'll just apply the same rules we would with the public hearing to keep it to 3 minutes. Does that work for you?
I thank you so much. I really do. I just barely saw this notice this morning. I'm sorry for not having more preparation to be in a better spot. I just didn't see it 3 days prior. I am just hoping that we can work together to learn how this is affecting businesses in Moab, businesses in the county, and look at whether we have any grandfather situations. The goal is to make a cohesive, livable community. I want to be certainly part of that, but we also want to be friendly to businesses that might already be in existence, that might be within some of these buffers. If you're open to an idea, because it seems like in our long-term plan that Sand Flats area, Cane Creek area are probably going to be high use areas. If we could possibly consider those areas as an attraction and make those areas part of that buffer zone, maybe, not this year, not next year necessarily, but on the way to Sand Flats, if you want to get a coffee, if you want to do something, instead of trying to create living spaces around areas that would be high use attractions, I'm hoping we can maybe use those as buffers. And one other comment, because at least I know the businesses that I know that are in the side-by-side are already in compliance in the county as far as noise ordinances go. Are we making additional, how are we identifying people as a noisy business? How is a bar identified as a noisy business? How are we going to quantify that? And I'm sorry if I'm over 3 minutes, I apologize.
You are shy of 3 minutes, but thank you so
Yay.
much for your comments.
You bet. Thank
All right,
you.
so I'd say
Lori, before you go, can I ask, how do you spell your first name and what's your last name?
Absolutely. Lori is the first one, and McFarland, McFarland. Thank you for taking my comments, Emily.
drive safe, Laurie, thank you. All right, so that was a little out of the order of business, but that way we accommodate people driving safely. Can we move the, that way you can join us at the table for your presentation. All right, so we will move on to the Atlas Mill presentation, which we have 15 minutes slated for. We'll see where it takes us.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Russ Bonkoch. I'm the chair of Grant County Site Futures Committee. And that committee was initiated in November of 2012. One of its items in our charter is to create a community vision for potential beneficial community use of the site that has multiple names, but I'll call it the former Atlas Tailings and Mill site at this point for this purpose this afternoon. So started in 2012 with the charter. The steering committee, if people know about it, our parent group, they are the watchdog group representing local government agencies with the surrounding lands and that sort of thing, monitoring the whole process of the remedial action work at the Atlas Mill site. So I was the first chair. Started in 2013. Prepared what we call the initial community vision, and that was then approved in early 2014 by both Grant County and Moab City by resolution. Those resolutions required that the vision be updated every 5 years. That's an opportunity to keep pace with changes in community sentiment and also knowledge about what's happening, what's potentially feasible at the mill site. So we did our next update in 2018, and that was looking at some changes that we captured then. We started the 2018 process. The biggest shift was that there was greatly increased public sentiment about not having a big commercial use portion of the property for hotels and that sort of thing. So we made some modifications in 2018 based upon that and other comments. And now for 2023, we're starting a little bit early, but completed in mid-2023. And we're using 2018 as the starting point for the 2023 update. We began meeting as a committee in October, and on November 16th, we had a public open house. We had about 20 attendees at City Hall. Very engaged group. We had workstations. People were able to comment on those workstations about the big versions of these maps, and they posted their comments on it. And also we encouraged them to fill out our online survey that we have on Grant County Connects. And that site, not only can you fill out the survey and indicate your preferences for different uses at the site and also general comments that the public may have. That's all available in addition to the full 2018 report, which this map, site-based map, and or after the pile document produced in 2018, which summarizes the history of the project up until that point, the community involvement that we had in 2018, and then it goes through facility by facility, describing each one that would be proposed They're grouped into clusters. Over here, we have the on the west side of Moab Canyon Wash, we're calling it the Prospector Community Park, Transit Center, the Welcome Center, and then on the east side, there's a convention and community performance theater, and several buildings that we proposed as kind of small retail that locals could also enjoy as well. And we're getting interesting comments on those this year so far. So see how that goes. Big trail system around the site. There's 480 acres total, but only we think about 95 acres potentially developable. And that is based on, you have to subtract out a substantial area of hillside up towards the rail bench, and also much larger even within the 100-year floodplain. So we're not considering those as developable areas, except for uses like trails and interpretation, information, that sort of thing. And then at the rail bench, it's the rail station and a trail up to a viewpoint there. So everything is on Grand County Connects. See if there's, I just want to focus too about how this is potential use. And this is it's a vision. It's not a plan. It's not property owned by the city or the county or any other local governmental entity. It's still federal property administered by the Department of Energy. So there's, for that to happen, for it, the vision to happen, I would have to have a property transfer. And there are several different pathways that we've been exploring as a committee. We had a great field trip over to Grand Junction in early November, and we visited Las Colonias Park. It's on the site of the former Climax uranium mill. They've gone through some 20 years for them to get to the process of when the mill closed. Now they have developed it into a very nice outdoor theater that could seat like 4,000 people or so on grass, bringing chairs. Nice building itself that can be kind of opened up when it's in use for events. They also have the parking area for that facility, and then they've done some modification to the river where they have a channel. It's kind of they've developed for floating activities and that sort of thing. And then the big part that they have is about 5 acres of a business park. Yeah, that seems to be working out well for them. Still have a few minutes left. So what questions? I encourage you to go on Grand County Connects and look at the details. Everything we've done is well summarized. Thanks to our great planning and zoning department and support of it.
Since I know there has been repeated public interest in housing on this area, and there's also limiters for why that wouldn't be allowed, I was wondering if you could speak to if it is possible around anywhere on the land, maybe not in the direct brownfields area, if that would be something the county could consider if we were able to get ownership of this land, or why that wouldn't.
Housing was another issue that came up strongly in 2018. We gave that considerable consideration, and there are too many unknowns to make a decision. We do, at the end of the project, there will be, the Department of Energy will have a site completion project report, and it will detail the radiation levels that are at the site. Their objective, their Office of Environmental Management, is to clean it up, but we'll see what the actual results are of that at the end. When we visited the Grand Junction facility, they do not allow housing, overnight use. They worked with the state of Colorado on a legal opinion, and they think under federal law it's not allowable on these federal properties. But we need to look at that too to see. But currently, other restrictions, they have no soil from that property can leave without a bucket by bucket inspection. for radiological hazards. No contact with the groundwater is allowed by in any means. They have a little pond, they call it the butterfly pond. It's sort of a training for paddle boarders and inner tubes. It's safe. But they have lined that and so that there's no contact possible with the groundwater within that pond. So there are some tough hurdles to get through. I mean, we have to think about the liability of the government. Having housing there years later, what could be the results of that? We always want to be positive in our results. So.
Thank you for clarifying that, because I know that's been an open community question.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyone else have any other questions?
I don't know if you mentioned it, Russ, but we're still taking input?
Yes,
through
yes,
the-
yes. Thank
through
you.
the
Thank you.
online?
Yes, through January the 31st, having public comment. So right on Graham County Connects, there's a comment submission form. It's go through and 1 to 5 rank for preference all of the facilities that are described in 2018, and then a set of open-ended questions that people can answer to get more into their comment. But if they have additional ideas or they really don't like something that we proposed or that sort of thing, we can get information that way. We're hoping to have this done we will have it done in 2013. Depending on public comment, it might be as early as having a presentation to the Montana's Project Steering Committee at their end of April meeting on the proposed changes for the 2023 update. We'll see. That all depends upon whether we have additional comments that come in that would require us to go through and not just sort of modify 2018, but actually come out with new alternatives to see to fully address comments. So.
So, comments open through January 31st. Presentation sometime in April to the steering committee, and this will be completed sometime towards the end of 2023, this next report. All right.
All right, if not earlier,
If not
it will be completed by 2020. So, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate your time. It's
All right.
interesting that I'm thinking about this. Why I've never had a presentation to this group before. It makes perfect sense that, as I'm sure you know, that the tailing site is a specially planned area under the North Gateway community. North Gateway. What is it called? The whole thing.
For the 2010 plan.
Yeah, North Gateway plan of some sort. Anyway, it's all there.
That's why we have our resort commercial and resort special.
Exactly.
The original.
Exactly.
Deep into the archives of plan history of Grand. Thank you so much, Chris. All right, we'll move on to approving of meeting minutes from all the way back on October 10th. In a while. Does anyone have any comments or adjustments to recommend? To the minutes as written? Seeing none, I will call for vote.
Do you want us
Make a
to,
motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from October 10th.
Hey, do we have a second?
I'll second
All right. Motion to approve by OB, seconded by Aaron. All in favor? And Steve?
Aye.
Your video? Oh, I can hear you.
Aye. Yeah.
Unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. We have a county commission update. Also been a little while since that.
I know, it's been a long time since I've seen you guys, and then I was not at the November meeting, sorry. I think it's the first meeting I missed this year. Elise is like,
Well, no, I don't even think we've had a November.
No, I think it was
oh, the
canceled.
November
It was
15th.
canceled.
I'm sorry, no, I meant the commission meeting.
Oh, the
So, yeah,
commission
yeah,
meeting, got it.
yeah.
Okay.
I did not go. I was out with some ranchers in the Book Cliffs, kind of talking about a possible conservation easement on a ranch out there that would kind of deal with some of the issues surrounding the Book Cliffs Highway. But I'll just kind of, and then maybe you could take over at a certain
I
point.
wasn't at that.
Okay, so I just pulled the minutes, and one of the interesting things that I think will be great for planning and zoning is we did approve a budget for an engineer's position. So that's pretty exciting. Yeah. As you might know, there was quite a bit of hubbub around the Rancho Nueve subdivision. Nuevo subdivision as far as stormwater management within that subdivision. So quite a few citizens to be heard. I think that's kind of pending. And lastly, that I think is of importance is the ADO pilot program passed 6-0. And do you guys want to hear any of the specifics surrounding that, or do you want me to read this, or I don't have to, but it,
I'd like a little bit.
okay. I'll give
High
you kind of
points.
give you the down low. So Commissioner Walker provided the overview on the latest changes and edits made by the proposed ordinance as discussed at length in various public meetings, as we know, including language regarding community compatibility, softer language regarding proximity to places of employment, intent to apply narrative requirements, a tri-annual review process. Commissioner Clapper suggested changing the timeline for site plan review to 12 months. Further discussion regarding sticking with staff language and making changes later if needed. Desire to create urgency regarding these developments and not incentives to move more slowly. Discussion regarding potential lack of oversight regarding the confirmation and enforcement of proper occupancy requirements laid out in 4.9.4. Chair Hadler mentioned Commissioner Hedines, that's me, desire to consider in the future more specific mapping where such development would be permitted. And that's something that Chrissy and I went over in the previous, or maybe two. You know, Christina's issue was that we didn't really have specific areas where this would be overlaid, and that was a concern for her. So I wrote Jacques just a few comments to be stated. And this was both Chrissy and myself, that a reduced cap on that pilot program. Discussion regarding the potential for 1 or 2 ADO developments to consume the entirety of that cap was discussed. So it passed 6-0. And the latter, just a quick discussion, Commissioner Clapper stated that he wished to continue to be open to improving the ordinance. However, he believes it's important to pass it now and acknowledge the urgency to bringing this tool to the table. And so yeah, it is a pilot program. We know that, and we'll just kind of see how it goes. That was it. But I think it's a relevance to this commission.
Thank you.
Yes, you bet.
Thank you for everything that you did and the conversations to help us make this a really meaningful community discussion.
Yeah.
I think with all the ordinances that we've worked on over the
Yeah.
last several years, you know, this one went through the ringer.
Right,
A lot of community dialogue about it.
right. Yeah. You bet.
Okay. With that, any additional updates? Any questions for Trish? Okay, we'll move on to general business. Conversation about the open house for Caitlin. Yes. So excuse me, Moab Area Affordable Housing Master Plan. But there is no.
Yes, it kind
So
of-
let's talk about the open house.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
They kind of bleed into each other. So next Monday, December 5th, from 4 to 6:30, we are going to be having the first annual Moab Housing Fair at the Mark. And this is an event where we're hopefully kicking off kind of a whole subsequent series about different housing options and housing successes and challenges within the Moab area. So the session or the fair is split into kind of 3 parts. So from 4 to 5, we are inviting local businesses to have kind of a roundtable discussion regarding workforce housing. So like what's been challenging, what's been successful, and we're hopefully going to be inviting some employers who have developed workforce housing in the past 4 years and just talking to them about the process and how do you create workforce housing. So that's the first hour. And then there's also going to be time for, we're going to have appetizers and food there. We're taking over the whole Mark. 5 to 5:30 is just kind of going to be a mingling session. And then we are also going to have the action plan, which we're going to be talking about in just a minute, available for folks to provide feedback on what do we think is the most important priorities and actions that the county, the city, the housing task force should be taking within the next few years to increase our affordable housing and, combat some of the major issues that we've been facing. And then we're also going to be having community partners there. So Sea Haven, Hossu's going to have a booth, CR, Southeastern Utah area of local governments is going to be there. Just sharing the housing resources that they also provide to the community. And then the last hour, we're going to be hearing from county and city staff and local officials who will be there and just providing information about what has been passed in the last couple of years and just kind of providing that high level information, as well as allowing this to be a time for kind of questions and answers from two officials and staff. So we're basically just looking forward to having this time to spur discussion among the general public, among the businesses, and this is, like we said, the first part of hopefully a 3-part series this winter with some other more specified sessions like for families, and also we're thinking about in February hopefully having a session on how to the steps towards developing an ADU. So looking forward to all of, and also this was graciously funded by the Economic Development Department rural grant funding, because they also deemed this very important for general public awareness and education. So yeah, that's what the housing fair is next Monday. And so the reason Caitlin and I are here is because over the last year, the Housing Task Force has been working diligently to update the Affordable Housing Plan, which if you don't know what that is, it gets adopted by the city and the county to provide recommendations about affordable housing and also just provide information and data about what the current housing situation is. And then the action plan is right at the end. And I apologize, in the packet, it came out very small, but these action steps are from 2017 that were deemed important based on different priority levels with different agencies and partners for the Moab area to consider. And basically these are recommendations of how the county and the city can move forward in implementing affordable housing. So Caitlin and I talked with the City Planning Commission probably a month ago or so, and we had really meaningful discussion about what they feel that, based on what they've passed in the last couple of years and what they see on the horizon as being important, what they'd like to include in the action steps. And if you just take a look at it, hopefully we can put it on the screen in a bit to have it a little bigger. Some of them are a bit outdated, or it's the wrong agency that is kind of being deemed most important. And so we just really wanted to have a time to have conversation with the Planning Commission and planning and zoning staff about what Grant County is deeming important, either what's on this list or what might not be on this list based on, hopefully we'll see a success with the ADO. So maybe a recommendation would be continue to maintain and modify the ADO as seen fit. So yeah, we just kind of went over it.
I think you did a great job. I don't have much to add yet. I think, we can have this. I think our goal is not necessarily to nitpick through each of these items. We certainly can. I defer to Emily or to the rest of the commission to decide how you want to go through it. And if you as a body, so for example, the city's planning commission did develop their own set of housing goals, so we kind of did a little bit matching. So if you have any kind of like high level thoughts, regardless of this list, that's what we want to do.
So before we open any conversation, what are the outcomes you're looking for Are you specific, are you looking for ideas? Are you looking for a critical lens into what has been? What could we do to make this most effective?
Yeah, I would say we're not tied to the structure of this. We've actually been in a lot of conversations about how to totally tear this apart and make it to a more like streamlined plan. So I would say we're not tied to how this is organized.
Right.
We're just focused on high level. We can figure out the details.
Yeah, so I would say tangibly, what would you see the county having feasible action steps? And there's so much on here. I think our vision is to certainly pare it down. And Caitlin and I have a pretty good understanding of looking at this list, what has already been done that we'll just probably omit when we're rewriting it all. So really, I think either updating, if you see action steps that are currently here that you're like, okay, I don't think this has been done, but I think it's really important. Can we rephrase it? Can we change the wording? And then, like Caitlin said, if there's ideas that aren't even on here, what can we add?
You said that this is part of the master plan, like it's in the document.
Yes, it's at the very end. But I think I'm interested in having it play a little bit more active role in the plan, because it doesn't, it doesn't feel like an afterthought, but I think these are very, like I said, tangible action steps that I think some have been achieved in the last 2 years without necessarily actually looking at the steps. So I guess that's great. But
You have momentum, you just need to
Totally.
do something with it.
yeah, so we are open for any comments, concerns, things that they're super excited about.
Why don't we start round robin? See if anybody has any ideas on the spot, and then perhaps we could just do a real quick run through of the list and react. Does that work?
Perfect.
Erin, do you want to kick us off? Do you have any ideas?
Can I take a pass?
Yes, you can.
Things that are not on here is what you're.
Sure.
Or
Shouldn't be, I think.
I think
shouldn't be, okay. got it.
I would like to pose the question of what are your housing goals for the next 5 years?
That's a great question.
Don't even think about the list. What do you think the county should focus on for housing goals in the next 5 years? Project and policy wise.
I mean, to me, to incentivize affordable housing in some manner, whether it's ADUs or with developers, some kind of incentive, incentives. That's one thing, but it's on here, so you guys already have it.
Great. And we can,
Yeah.
after this, we can always
Yeah.
hone in on it.
I actually like Steve Evers' project, which is an HDHO project, in part because it's kind of focused on tiny houses.
Yeah,
And I think it's important to get real affordable housing.
yeah,
So I like the idea of a little bit greater density, which saves money, and a little bit smaller houses that actually save money, and that's only one part of the community. So of course, we do need, I'll just make it up, school teachers don't need more room than other people, but maybe they want more room than a tiny house, and that's good too. And whatever you can do to supply information. So this is this idea of kind of monitoring so we can know, and I guess this happens in these annual reports, how much affordable housing is there for people in this range, and what is the need, is just very helpful as we plan. Sort of at the end of HDHO, some people were suggesting, ooh, we're running near the limit of what we have to offer. Maybe we should start being selective on what we think is actually extra needed. So it's very helpful to have that monitoring data.
Steve, are you able to chime in?
Yeah, I'll share very limited thoughts. Sorry, I'm kind of a lame duck. I'm sick and mostly here just to support the quorum.
Ooh,
Maybe, I mean, looking at, I didn't really know what I was looking at when I reviewed the packet here with this big spreadsheet. I'm wondering though, if going through, and I'm not sure how recent the status column was updated. If not,
It's not been updated since probably 2017, 2018.
okay, so I think maybe going back to that and reassessing and understanding where the status are currently with these, and then getting stakeholders together. I see, I'm not sure which column it is there. I don't have my screen pulled up, but it looks like it's the third column. I don't know if that's stakeholder. Okay, implementation partners, stakeholders. Talking with them and having them go over this and pick out, okay, what are your favorite things going on? What are you most hopeful about? What do you think is going to be the most effective? And then highlight those and focus on those, kind of more of a strength-based approach, because there's a lot there. And I see city and county on a lot of those things. And, if we can pull more people in there, developers, small business development center, the college, whatever we can do, play to our strengths and focus on those areas.
Really. I think that was, one of the reasons why we wanted to come to both city and county. And it does seem like there's a ton on their plate in terms of, who's the lead agency and implementation partners. And even just in my looking through the whole action plan, I even feel like some of the implementation partners are kind of incorrectly assigned to some of these action steps. So I don't know if we even want to include both implementation partners and lead agency. So that's certainly something to consider talking about further as well. So, thank you, Steve.
Sure thing. Yeah, it looks a little cumbersome and mucky. Good luck.
Yeah. It is.
I have a long list, so Erin, do you have anything you want to add before
It just, when I was looking this over last night, I didn't really understand it. I was like,
and I apologize for not really giving
yeah, and I was
context.
like, okay, the priority level, like the low hanging fruit levels, things that we could do. And I'm sure each one of these things seems like pages of,
Right.
things behind it. And like, I guess that's my only input on that
Make it simpler.
yeah, well,
No,
yeah.
it's so true,
No, I
because we
understand.
want everyone to be able to digest it. And I would say, in general, you're on the planning commission, so you're even more tuned in, more
Yeah.
so than the average citizen. And if it's confusing for you, we
Right.
want, the average citizen to be able to read it and understand. So even
Yeah.
that feedback is
So
important.
you guys are using this as like, are you passing this along for us to like, pull some levers here, pass some stuff?
Next year.
Uh-huh.
If this county passes the plan,
Uh-huh.
absolutely, we'll come back and
Okay.
say, you said you're gonna do this. on our plan."
Yeah, that's what I figured.
But right now, we're collecting feedback. We're taking a look at what we said we wanted to do in 2017 and saying, what did we do? What didn't we do? Obviously, there are a lot of, you look at the timeline and it's like, at that point, we projected that we were gonna do a million things in 2017, 2018. Impossible to do. So one of the things we're doing now is trying to figure out how to simplify what's realistic for the next 5 years. So the feedback that we got from the city, for example, is they want to focus on things that they've already passed that need review. They're focusing on making sure their land use code is working the way it should, the way they want it to, before thinking about new stuff. So even that feedback for us is like, we're not interested in doing another big ADO or a big HDHO. Our focus in the next 5 years is to see how those are working and fix them as needed. So even that feedback is useful.
Paring this list down and probably prioritizing is one of the,
Yes.
is our job to get
Okay,
to that.
Yes.
I see. That's clear.
And then adding things that maybe aren't on there. I can't
Exactly.
imagine what's not on here.
I know, it is on there.
Well, and some of these things, it's like, okay, like let's see, There's something about a website, and it's like, well, you guys have Green County Connects.
Right.
Housing Task Force has Moab Housing.
Yeah,
So we
right.
have that. We can
Yeah.
mix
Cross
that.
that
Yeah,
off the
I
list.
agree.
We have that
Yeah.
under control. You know, it's
Yeah.
things like that.
There are some things that have been accomplished, so that
Right.
would be
Yeah.
Yeah.
good to recognize in the
Right.
new plan
And
too, just
sure,
to
yeah.
say, here's the section on like all the things that we said we were gonna do in 2017 that got accomplished.
That's a great point.
Just doesn't feel like we're always trying to
Mhm.
achieve things
Yeah.
that we're doing.
Yeah.
So two sort of high level comments. The first relates to that, which is we have things we have done that we are tracking or we feel good about. We are waiting for the county to adopt the changes to the land use code related to ADUs to make use less costly to build and to meet state code. We have other things we know we've seen some built out of, but could be made better. And I think categorizing what has been done that seems like it's working well, what has been done that we would like to revisit, and then what still remains on the roadmap, what is sort of a short-term priority versus a long-term. I'd love to see that scale. I mean, I think housing is something that is felt so acutely by people in the community, but often it's difficult for people to know what they can avail themselves of, what has been done, and what we can build on. The more honest and open that conversation is as a community, the better off we are.
And since you have a long list, I don't want you to hurt your throat by talking continuously. And that's part of what I would mean by monitoring. It would be really nice to know what Arroyo Crossings has done, what the
Right.
HDHO has done. We know it's been delayed a lot on financing reasons. What accessory dwelling units has done, because I don't really kind of have it in one list, and then we'd be able to see where we're making progress. So, yeah,
Yeah.
excuse me.
I quickly frameworked my thoughts to reduce the length of my comments.
You can
Although-
always send them to us.
I can always send them to you.
We'd
Well, no,
like-
I won't go off, but I do think you raise an interesting point there. I think the other side of this conversation is we often talk about ideas in a way that sort of abstracts from the reality. So the way we talk about HDHO, saying it's delayed due to financing, do we know why it's delayed? And are there more than one solution to relieve that constraint versus the one that's been suggested? I think having an open conversation about the myriad possibilities is healthy. Similarly, we talk about ADUs as a solution to housing affordability. The average ADU, fully sited and permitted for people to live in, costs hundreds of thousands of dollars on average nationwide, with getting costs of goods to market. You can imagine we're in that range easily. On the one hand, if I'm building a new home and I build an ADU, I can rent it out and it can offset the cost of my mortgage. But if I'm buying a new home at 7% interest rate for $800,000, the added cost of building an ADU may be prohibitive to many people. Are we talking realistically about this? So I would framework my thoughts just at a high level. I won't go into details along 4 categories. First is, I think, incentives. Incentives can be things like reducing permitting fees, working with GWSSA. Are there tax incentives? I talked to a number of people over the last few months, some of whom have deed restricted their homes that they own or pay mortgage on their own accord. Is there a way to incentivize that type of behavior for willing people? Also working with the state on some of the new things going into their legislative session. There's some really interesting bills being discussed. Data. So here's another example on data. In the discussion of ADO, one of the concerns was we feel like this should be a temporary use. How do we make sure this doesn't become a place where people just sort of, we have a class of people that live in RVs and other people who live in homes. Do we have homes in the pipeline so that when people land, if they live in a alternative dwelling within the first 9 to 18 months, they can move into a different type of housing, right? Is that a conversation? Like, do we have the data to have a realistic conversation as a community? Data goes beyond just knowing what has been happening. I think it makes better trade-offs and better strategy. And we talk objectively and not in terms of emotion, talking points or whatever. Relieving artificial constraints. That includes the land use code, 4-acre minimum for manufactured housing communities. There's no reason for that. What we're seeing right now in the manufacturing modular housing industries is because stick frame homes are so much more expensive to build, We're increasingly seeing innovation in those industries, but often the cheaper way to get those housing approved is through a HUD certification as opposed to through the International Building Code. The way that those two policies net out is the difference is sort of arbitrary, except for all intents and purposes, us and other communities treat HUD certified homes as RVs, even when many of them are often more similar to stick frame homes than to RVs. So there's already innovation happening in other communities, even in Utah in this area. I'd really like us to look at removing that as an artificial constraint. If we can innovate through policy, it's a lot easier for us to innovate through the markets. I think another artificial constraint is land. An idea that was recommended by somebody on the Economic Development Advisory Group was, well, if I own an acre of land out in Spanish Valley and half of that acre is just wild, I don't have the money to develop a $200,000 ADU, but could I deed restrict, similar to how the Community Land Trust manages land in a Royal Crossing, half of my acre where I would be paid a lump sum up front or some equity over time, and another entity like the Community Land Trust could construct an ADU on that piece of property. So I get the same density as I would if I were constructing it, but it doesn't rely on individuals to have the liquidity to build. So I think there's ways that we might, do that. Last category is water. Water will continue to be a constraint. I think water is also something, as speaking with some researchers recently, and as growth has accelerated in California, they've actually seen per capita water use go down in their urban areas. Similar things are happening in Arizona right now. On the other hand, if you look at the most recent data on the GWISA website, and water use per capita is going up, as growth is going up here. The faster we can be water wise in terms of our own policies, one, it gives us the ability to plan as opposed to reacting to future constraints. So I think it's better to always be on the balls of your feet versus on the heels. But also it allows us to remove that constraint as well, to be able to build to meet workforce and housing demands for families in a way that also maintains future sustainability. Those are my thoughts. Anyone else?
I don't have a lot of thoughts right now. I think I will definitely email you some input as I look at it a little bit further.
And I think what's coming through most just from this discussion for me and what Caitlin and I can work on is just the framework in which we want to present this. I'm kind of having some good ideas about like what Opie and Emily said about short-term, long-term, and now kind of solutions. So I think that's definitely something that Caitlin and I will take a look at and reformat. So I think that was really helpful for me. And I also think annual monitoring and data is something that not just the county could be better at, but also just the housing task force too. I think even just compiling some sort of like fairly easy like annual report from the housing task force could be super beneficial every year.
That's actually something that I think we would want to work on together too, in order to provide, like, incorporate that into, our department will do a report to the commission every year.
Okay.
And the planning commission, kind of on everything planning, but I think part of that, I've always envisioned having like a really good, solid update on, or kind of snapshot of everything that's been done in the year.
Yeah.
Or where we're
And
at,
projections,
you
I
know.
feel like can be really important too.
And I
Yeah.
think, and I've reached out to Utah State and haven't gotten much reception, but I think reaching out to Utah State and some of the researchers there, and it's like gateway communities and, what are the effects of that? I think that would be great.
I think that would be awesome.
Right. I mean, I definitely, there's a couple researchers specifically within Utah State looking, there's one guy, Jordan Smith, that has done quite a bit of research around Moab. So, approaching somebody like that and letting grad students do the research, right?
My brain is blanking on the group out of the NAR initiative. I knew it started with the NAR initiative. Excellent, which we've worked with. We've actually, city and county.
Yeah.
Two other small things. One, multi-family housing. The issue there is not just how do we build it, but also how do we build community consensus that it should be built and where. The faster we can be exposing those sort of pre-mortem in that. I so much prefer that we move forward as a community together as opposed to reacting to individual developments or individual policies as they're proposed.
Yeah.
And the second one is, and this has come up a lot in conversations and comments I've heard as well, financing, particularly financing for manufactured housing. Most of our manufacturing stock predates the 1979 code change, which makes them very difficult to sell and refinance, as well as just things like occupancy standards and so on. So anything we can do to make it easier for locals to finance housing, particularly of non-large single-family stick-frame homes that are out there.
Awesome.
I just thought of one, I'm just looking right now, I don't think I see it on here yet, which would be, we have like the create zoning regulations for tiny homes, but beyond that, what we are gonna be working on with the future land use plan is looking at designating areas for higher density and kind of really reevaluating our multifamily zoning and trying to incorporate what we've learned from the HDHO and past efforts to adopt multifamily zoning. We don't really have a lot of it in the county
Awesome.
right now, so I think that could be on the list.
Perfect. Great. And now that you all have a little bit more clear idea of what we're asking, feel free, if you continue to take a look and have more ideas or modifications that you'd like to bring to the table, feel free to send Caitlin an email or Lisa and they can pass it on. And we're also going to be we wanted to get together with planning commissions from city and county prior to the housing fair, so we could kind of create more of a tailored approach of how we wanted feedback from the public. So also, if you happen to be at the housing fair, we're going to have a spot to look through the action plan and provide feedback. So you can also bring that there.
Have county and city planning staff done any auditing across our different policies and codes to look at the delta?
I don't think so.
That would be really interesting.
That would be really interesting.
That would be great. Put it on our next agenda.
You're like,
We do have regular, well, we don't have a regular meeting scheduled with city planning staff, but we have met and we intended to set it up as a regular schedule. So I think we need to just take that.
Great. Anything else? Any other comments? Steve, I'm sorry you're sick. I hope you feel better soon. Don't feel like you have to come off mute and respond either. Our next discussion item is actually going to be very quick. We had planned for a workshop at our last meeting, which was canceled, and then this meeting we have a public hearing. Essentially, the long and the short of this is we want to have a way to get a deeper understanding of the barriers in the system to develop housing more at the individual project level compared to the policy level. Elisa and I were just discussing prior to this meeting. The issue there is we want to make sure we have more people at the table, the right people at the table, and getting a time scheduled when we can get participation from people across the community. So we're going to work on seeing if we can get people committed to attend that kind of workshop. We've got a draft agenda and more updates to come, but without having participation from the people who would be involved in that type of decision making, it's sort of difficult to frame it.
I would say for this meeting, it's really more of a future consideration item that we'll be working on for the next meeting.
Sweet. Okay, any other discussion items? All right, we have a public hearing on the agenda. So we will go ahead and move on to that. And since I know we have a number of people here to comment, I'll just give a quick overview of how we run public hearings on code changes since there's no individual applicant. We will invite staff to give a short overview of this proposed change, after which we will open up the public hearing and ask anybody who is here to make a comment to limit the length of their comments to 3 minutes, and we will have a timekeeper. Once everybody has had a chance to make their comments, we have no additional comments, we will then open up discussion before entertaining a motion. So because of the number of people here, and I know we have people online as well, I'd love to be orderly about this. So do y'all mind if we just sort of go down the rows? And that way everyone has a chance to speak? Does that work? Okay.
Will we just speak from where we are?
Nope, if you find, when you have a chance to speak, and again, we're gonna do a staff report first, but you'll come up to the chair, state your full name, and then I'll start the timer for 3 minutes, and that way everybody feels like they get equitable time to speak. You don't have to use the full 3 minutes, but you're allowed to. I'll come back to just the format.
Yeah, just when you said discussions after the comments, are we allowed to be part of the discussion?
So the way public hearings work is we limit our comments to 3 minutes for equitable participation, and then the planning commission has a discussion about this item. We try to keep any substantive discussion until we have a motion, which means we're not debating whether we would or wouldn't vote on something until there's a motion on the table. But generally speaking, during a public hearing, there's no back and forth with the public. If you do have a question or a comment to clarify your comments, what I'll ask is we normally have comment cards. We'll make sure we have those. If you wanted to, you can come up and just give it to Jenna. And that way, nobody feels like they're blocked from speaking, but it does allow us to be consistent and orderly. That help? Okay. So with that, we'll move on to staff overview.
Okay, so the proposed amendment to the land use code in front of you this evening would revise section 3.2.3 commercial use standards and section 2.3.2.5 other use standards to establish new development standards in order to address noise impacts from commercial activity adjacent to residentially zoned parcels and other sensitive uses such as schools and churches. Included in this update is a revised section a revision to section 6.10 compatibility standards, where a new subsection would be created establishing noise mitigation development standards. In a subsequent land use code update to Article 10, this isn't part of the update tonight or the ordinance for tonight, but Article 10 is our definitions, and so in that update in the future, the term businesses producing noise will be included in that and will be defined. The noise mitigation standards would require businesses producing noise to be located outside of a 200-foot buffer from residentially zoned parcels, schools, and churches, etc. If within 200-foot buffer, a sound barrier wall or tree buffer must be installed along the property line adjacent to the residential property or sensitive uses. To address the impacts of outfitter guide services and facilities, particularly those that operate their businesses on the U-Drive or follow behind model, an overlay district is proposed, which would be creating a new section in Article 4 for special purpose overlay districts, which would permit those types of businesses and locations adjacent to off-road trails in order to minimize the impact of ATV, UTV traffic through neighborhoods. So just a little background here. So if you look at our zoning map, you can see the highway commercial zoning is all along Highway 191 in the south corridor. And when that map was created so many decades ago, there was not really any consideration of providing any kind of buffer between highway commercial and residential zoning. So it's just highway commercial and then residential zone right up against the most intensive commercial zoning that we have. And so this is just creating a lot of problems for those residences in those neighborhoods in terms of noise and the impacts to public health, safety, and welfare. So I'm just going to read straight from the draft code language. This came from the language that we've been working on with the county attorney and from some of the county commissioners as well. So noise pollution can cause stress-related illnesses, high blood pressure, speech interference, hearing loss, sleep disruption, and lost productivity, among other health impacts. Noise pollution disproportionately affects unincorporated areas of the county because 1, hard surfaces such as rocks and canyons reflect noise, which increases noise pollution. 2, noise has a larger acoustic impact in canyon country, which has lower ambient noise and fewer absorptive landscape features such as vegetation and trees. 3, visitor populations are large and often far exceed local populations. And 4, many trailheads are accessible only through residential neighborhoods. In addition, total vehicle noise, vibration, and frequency also increase with speed on county roads. So that's kind of the synopsis of this ordinance. It's kind of been in the works for many, many months. I would say even maybe over a year before it got to our department, where we've kind of just been trying to incorporate it into our code. Any questions on just the basics there?
I'm going to ask a few questions that have come up in comments just to make sure that we are operating around a collective understanding of what this does and what this wouldn't do. So first of all, given that this is a county ordinance and not a city ordinance, would you just describe the boundaries to which this would apply and wouldn't apply so far as existing uses on the ground?
Yeah, so I'm actually gonna share my screen with you all here. So we looked at the highway commercial zoning in the South Spanish Valley area, south of Moab, and created a map that kind of illustrates that 200-foot buffer. In the blue is the 200-foot buffer area. So essentially, those parcels would be affected by this ordinance. All of the highway commercial zoning kind of throughout this area here. I can just zoom in a little bit. And so you can see there's actually a lot of existing businesses that are just outside of the 200-foot buffer. And so just kind of by whatever circumstances, those were already constructed 200 feet away from the residential zone parcels. You can see the little building footprints. Does that help? Does that answer your question?
And
Do you
just
want to move it?
pointing to,
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, I don't think everybody just can see that, know exactly where their building is.
sorry, we're
Oh,
gonna,
yeah, no, that's not what that's meant for.
and just to clarify again, if there is a use within that blue area, the buffer, the ordinance would require the construction, or would this be grandfathered, or would they require construction of a sound barrier or a tree buffer?
So existing businesses would not be affected by this unless, my understanding is, and this is probably needs to be confirmed by the attorney, but I believe if you did any substantial improvements to your property, to your business, that would kick in the requirement to comply with the new standards. So constructing a buffer. And so most of this will actually affect new development more than existing development. And if you're in the 200-foot buffer, you could still build within that buffer. Actually, here's a very clarifying point to make. If a business is located outside of the 200-foot buffer, no sound barrier wall needs to be built, no buffer.
That would be in the
tree
red.
buffer. That would be in the red,
Okay.
yeah. If you are within the blue buffer zone, that would kick in the requirement to build a sound barrier wall or a tree lined buffer sound.
If you made a substantive improvement to your property.
For existing, yeah, yeah. But I'm talking about for new development, new applications that would be affected by this.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Got a question, point of clarification, please, Karen.
You know what I'll ask is, do you mind leaving those with your comments, and we'll make sure that every single point of clarification is captured, and we'll make sure that we go through. Let's, okay. So if you want to step up.
Yeah.
Ken,
Yeah,
we'll-
I'm aware of that, but not yet.
Okay.
What's going on?
Well, so we're going to open up the public hearing, and what I was going to suggest is that we go down the lines, and that way we make sure that everybody. Sure. Would you like to start? Looking here in the back row. Are you here to make a comment? Will you raise your hand if you're here to make a comment versus just listen? Okay, would you mind stepping forward, and I'll invite you to make a comment first? And what we'll do is we'll have you speak. Would you all rather the chair or the podium?
The chair.
Chair will do, we'll do the chair.
Yeah. you'd say
All
that.
right.
And the camera will get him that way
Yeah,
also.
the camera will get, yeah.
Look at this here. Thank you. Oh, that's.
This chair.
Perfect.
If you could cite your name and spell that as well.
So if everyone, when you come up to the chair, if you wouldn't mind stating your name and spelling it, just so that we have it in the minutes, that would be great. And then, like I said, I'll start the 3-minute timer after that.
Sure.
Okay, all right, thank you.
My name is Sean Walter, and I have the Moab Tourism Center here in Moab. We've been operating now for about 13 years. We've recently moved into a new location this last year, which was the old Burger King building. So we're right across from McDonald's. I guess the question would be, a lot of my comments are based on clarity and understanding what this is. I really don't know how to comment exactly because I don't understand what's been written in the ordinance exactly. I did read some information in there that was talking about the B classification, and I do tours, so I would be kind of classified B. It did have something in there that was saying if you have a U drive, which is what we do, we have 4 machines that follow our guide that go up mostly to the Hell's Revenge Trail. It was talking about if you do travel through any residential area that you would no longer be able to do that.
Oh, no.
Okay, because there is a line in there that is discussing on the way up there. I did read something like that, that you cannot travel through any residential area.
So
Is what it says.
Let's do this. I want to make sure everyone has a chance to get their questions answered, and I want to give everybody equitable time to speak.
Sure.
So I'm going to pause. Do you want to address that really quick?
Yes, so this is for our land use code, right? So it's we use our land use code for processing new development, new
Okay.
businesses coming in.
Okay.
So existing businesses that like such as yours would not
Be
have to
affected.
change.
Okay.
Yeah, you wouldn't be all of a
Okay.
sudden prohibited from driving through wherever you have to
Doing what
drive.
we've been doing.
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That would be like a completely different, that would be like changing our county general code and saying all of a sudden, we're
Okay,
changing the rules
sure.
in a broad way, not
Right.
just like for
For
processing
future
new
development.
development
This is
applications. right?
mainly based.
And for current
Yeah.
and future development, this doesn't change the laws of access to public roads.
Right.
This doesn't affect you or others in your ability to use those roads. The goal here, as written in this draft, is to locate future uses in a way that limits or mitigates
Sure.
the impact and the conflict that we've been seeing with people saying, hey, my neighborhood is too noisy. So
Yeah.
really what this is intending to do is to reduce that conflict
Yeah.
for future development
Yeah.
so that we can all coexist.
Knowing that is future development
Yes.
certainly helps my comments, I would
Okay.
imagine, for everybody. So the Moab Tourism Center, we're kind of like a place where you can get free area information, but we also do activity bookings and whatnot, and we do our own tours. I soon decided a long time ago to do a tour versus a rental. It was just easier. And certainly for stress level, whatnot, it was just a much smoother way to go. I would just advocate again, tour companies, we're doing our very best to, drive that 20 miles an hour, to stop at those stop signs. I think we're great advocates of as a community coming together and trying to lead this. As the Moab Tourism Center, I'm happy as people are coming in and giving out information and doing everything I can to advocate, to try to make this the best place we can make it. I understand we have issues, but we want to be on the team. I want to be on the team to try to, in a positive way, to try to make things better. And so I would always say with tour companies especially, try to be a part of a partnership, that to be a positive way for us to, improve our community. And that I'll always do everything I can to make our community the best that we can make it. And try to educate and teach people. They might come in, make sure you have water with you. Make sure, don't go out there in the desert in that area. It's dangerous. So all of these things, come up. We do everything we can to help educate. And I hope to that. And I'm very happy to hear it's not affecting existing businesses. So thank you so much.
But what about if they, for their next city business license?
Okay.
I know it's not, for like new businesses, but what about if he wants to renew his business?
Can we, I'm going to ask that everyone online stay muted. We will give an opportunity for everybody in the room and everybody online to speak. And I promise we will make sure we are not arbitrary.
Sean asked it.
Have their questions answered? Yep, no, it's a great question and we'll make sure to answer it. But just for the sake of making sure everyone gets their voice heard, we are going to sort of go down the list.
Good question. I certainly want to try to renew my business license when it comes about. So that is a great question. So thank you.
Can you please spell your name?
Sure, S-H-O-N.
O-N?
Yeah, kind of unique.
And how do you spell? just to be sure?
Walter, W-A-L-T-E-R.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And your business is located in the city?
Yes, it's located in the city, right next to McDonald's where the Burger King used to be. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we'll pause. We did have a question that we'll answer right now. The question was, if you are an existing business owner and you go to renew your business license, how, if at all, would this affect you? And again, I want to clarify that if this were to pass by the county commission, this would apply to businesses in the county. This would not apply to businesses in the city. The county laws wouldn't apply to the city. That would be up to the city to determine if they change their land use code similarly. That would be their discretion. Would you mind addressing that question of how this affects business licensing?
Yeah, this would not affect business licenses. This is only for brand new future development that would have to be going through like a site plan application through planning and zoning. That's when these requirements would be applied, but not for business
Every
license.
single year, you have to get that accomplished. And on your business license, you have to write.
We're going to, I'm sorry, Brittany, can you please, I understand wanting to get your questions answered. You will have an opportunity to make your comments. And I promise that we will make sure that all questions are answered. But we have to be respectful of staff and of each other's time in order to make this a conversation that gets the clarity that's needed. So just to clarify on this particular issue, this does not affect business licenses. Another example in this ordinance that we are considering relates to things like dog kennels and dog runs. So this is not unique to any particular type of use. This is a way to look across the board at our land use code, largely related to highway commercial, and say where we have highway commercial abutting residential, how do we decrease the impact on the residential neighborhoods by requiring things like a noise abating wall or trees for future development of these types of uses. So this is not specific to business licenses. This doesn't affect business licenses. This would be no different than requiring that somebody who is building a home has a certain setback before the home can be permitted. That is the type of ordinance that this is. This is not related to business licenses. Okay. All right.
Okay, I do want to be respectful. So when do I get my chance to speak? Because I can't see
Brittany,
what you guys.
I promise we are going to go down the list. We do have more people than we normally have for a public hearing, but we generally do a very good job of making sure that everyone has a chance to speep. I think we had about 6 people in the room who wanted to speak. And then for the sake of ease, we'll move to online comments from there. Did you want to make a comment? Okay, you want to come up to the chair?
Okay.
Yes, please do.
Well, he's going to talk. Did you put the map on the north end of the county?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, the map would be very helpful for my comments and questions, of course.
Okay.
My name is Randy Day, R-A-N-D-Y, D-A-Y. Keep that as simple as possible. Thank you. Anytime that you consider an ordinance, and I'm not sure where this ordinance developed from or how it's going. But it's a very contentious ordinance based on its premise. Basically, what you're saying is we're gonna make you build something, we're gonna make you plant trees, we're gonna make you use water to plant those trees. Don't know how high the wall is, don't know what considers where the definition is, quote, noisy business. Don't know any of that stuff. It concerns me greatly. It concerns me that we have these two zones put together and the county is gonna burden the individual with it. The county is the one that approved the zones. Therefore, county should be paying for the wall and the trees and the watering and all of that. You created this, not the individual. They come up with a business that fits within the zone that you say, and they are burdened again with more rules and regulations and cost. We already have a problem. I dare say that there's some places with 3 children in a family that could not pass a noise ordinance. There are some with 6 that would do just fine. So it depends on the individual. Some folks' dogs bark half the night. I can hear them from blocks away, so 200 feet's not enough. Ergo, everybody has an opinion. Very difficult to do. But you're improving what you say is quiet. What I say is an encroachment on private property rights and cost. Please bear that in mind. This county doesn't have enough land to go around for any development. You look at the corridor and there it is. It's on a map. It's simple to see. You're going to take 200 feet and push it back on lots, and all of those people are going to be affected. All those lots are going to be affected. Who's going to pay for that noise wall? When the highway departments come in and build noise walls, they pay for them because they're impacted. If the county wants to do it, let the county pay for it. That's my opinion. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you.
Thank
Well
you
done
for your
business.
comments. Lisa, could you clarify where else in the land use code we require things like trees and noises for development and walls for development? Are there other examples?
The section 6.10, the compatibility standards. We have, it's only for screening of like storage areas. I don't think we have anything currently that.
I think we require a tree for every lot on an RV park.
Oh, yes, for like, yeah, for shade and that kind of thing, but not for like a actual sound reducing, noise reducing buffer or anything like that.
And where is noisy business defined? I know there's recommended changes that we are not looking at tonight to Title 10.
Right.
Where else could we, or Article 10, sorry, where else could we find it?
You know, I don't know if that has been drafted yet, actually, the noisy business definition, that's.
Thank you. Okay, so we will move on to our next comment. Anyone else on the side who wanted to make a comment? Did you want to make a comment?
Yes,
Step up to the chair, state your name and spell it if you don't mind.
My name is Brenner Perriott, BRENNER PARRIOTT. It's pretty simple. My public comment is really that I rushed out of work today to see what standards or compliance I'd need to be in if this changed. I've heard some small comment on the agenda being set and things, and my biggest comment on it is that I would like to, in some sense, have some awareness of things like this so I can be a part of it. I was able to look at the agenda, but the minutes and the agenda come out very prior to, like, your agendas aren't released days before. So I didn't really have any know-how that this was going to be on the meeting tonight. And it's super terrifying for us. We have no idea what's going on to walk into the meeting and say, hey, what's going on? You know, as one of probably the only auto repair businesses in the county, I know there's maybe one more, but they're pretty small. We support 80% of this community. And if there's anything that's going to hinder us from that, I really want to just be a part of it. So before anything gets passed, I'm just trying to read through it right now. But if things are going to get passed tonight, I really ask you guys to just think about it before we make any crazy decisions. Because realistically, it affects us a lot.
Right.
And I don't want anything change-wise to be going underheard or underknown without seeing our point of view and seeing what we go through on a daily basis. Dust control is one of them that I saw on there. Excuse me. Dust control alone would cost me over 50 grand to fix our lot to make that work. Noise mitigation alone would be another huge cost for us to try to make it work. So as long as you guys are hearing our voices and understanding that there's a very small amount of auto repair facilities in the county, And if it does directly affect them, I'm not saying I'm against helping make our community a better place, but I am against it being kind of a shock factor. I'm against that feeling of me having to run down here, shut my shop down because I don't have enough employees to run the freaking place, to come talk to you guys about what the heck's going on here. I'd like a little bit of heads up. I'd like a little bit of awareness. I used to get meetings from county development. I used to get meetings from the county all the time before the preparedness, so I could come in here and have a constructive discussion with you guys. This time I'm really underprepared and undermined because I don't know what's going on. But I can tell you I'm one of the biggest auto repair facilities in the county. And I want you guys to work with me. I am open 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, and I'm there 7 days a week. And I've never seen one county member ever come in and talk to me, especially about political reasons or changes or agendas or anything along those lines. So if you can involve the businesses and just make sure we're here to be heard and help you guys make good constructive decisions with you, that's my biggest thing. I don't want to be shocked and surprised if something gets voted in tonight, because if it does affect me, I want to know. However, may that be beneficial or helpful, get me on the right path. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. And one thing I do want to clarify is, as a recommending body, it's our job to look at the ordinance as written and make a recommendation to the county commission. But the county commission is ultimately the deciding body on this and similar ordinances. There will be at least two public meetings where this would be discussed. There'll be the public hearing similar to this. And then the county commission generally leaves public hearings open for an additional week for any public comment, at which point there's ample opportunity to submit comments and get more information about what. So nothing is decided in this meeting, and the county commission is not beholden to any recommendations made by this board.
That's awesome.
And
That
then-
simple clarification
Yeah.
would help us immensely.
Yeah.
Cool.
And
I'll-
then,
oh, go ahead.
you know, I'm the county commission liaison, right, Brenner? So I take, you know, all of this feedback back to the county commission. So I hear your comments, I'm writing them down, and I'll get moved forward.
Just want to be a part of it. That's my biggest
Yeah.
comment.
Also just want, I'm not sure if you were here for the clarifying discussion regarding how this works with existing businesses. It will not affect your, this is for new development, like brand new application coming to planning and zoning for
Right.
a
So here's a
new-
perfect
new
example of why
business.
that's kind of like a overlap, is because I don't own the property I rent from currently. So if I were to buy it and repurchase and have a new business owner coming in, technically I'd have to go through those processes again as a landowner versus just a renter. So it could have some gray areas where you're gonna have to get relicensed or restructured commercially at some point. So as long as that's understood, that's my biggest like underlying here is, it was super random when this agenda came out with not a lot of, hey, there's 2 auto shops in the county. By the way, you guys should look into this information. Usually the county's emailing me that stuff. Something that directly relates to some, like literally a handful of businesses in town. It would be beneficial to just know, not necessarily all be answered in one event, but knowing what's going on is huge. And I'm just getting a lot of gray from like descriptions in the current agenda today. So it's really not anything, I'm not like terrified someone's gonna take our shop away from us. It's the know-how of seeing how it's gonna work in the future and how relicensing and changing. Like I've moved 3 times already owning my business. So this could affect me like that if I had to move again. I don't own the property. The next place I move into could be like, oh, well, you need all of this before you can start. And our workloads could entirely change, where right now structurally we couldn't manage it. So that's my simplistic view on it, is the future, not necessarily the present.
It's very helpful clarification. And I have found that the difference between the bodies, like the planning commission versus the county commission, is, you know, it's confusing to
Yeah.
folks. There's a lot, you know, things that are hard to kind of keep track of in terms of how things operate. You know, we, like other recommending bodies, anything that comes before the planning commission is a recommendation that goes to the county commission. And a lot of this is there so that there's a fail-safe, because there is a lot to keep track of. There's a lot going on. It's the holidays. And so when you have something like this, it gives us the opportunity to make sure the voice of the community is coming in. We have county commissioners who listen and bring that back to the commission. And now you have also a lot more understanding of this and the ability to anticipate those public hearings on the county commission. So, you know, it's great to have this conversation, but just know that anything that comes before the planning commission is always done done with that opportunity of shaping with the public and bringing it to.
So is this gonna be discussed in the future as well with the planning commission?
We will make a motion tonight and send a recommendation forward, and then the planning commission is not likely to discuss this in the future. It will be discussed by the county commission going
Okay.
forward.
That's perfect, because if I would have been, that's my whole point. It's like, this agenda came out an hour ago, and I just, that preparedness to have a constructive discussion with you
Yeah.
guys. I want to be constructive with what I communicate with you guys. So even if it's a personal issue that I need to find where to find my information, it's very hard to find information on what's going on with county planning versus commission planning.
It's a great point. And I think it's something that came up with housing earlier today. How do we make it easier to get information? So yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for your comments. All right. You ready? Want to go?
I don't have enough time. It's Mark Moore, M-A-R-K, M-O-O-R-E. Ultimate UTV Adventures. First thing is what he said, anything to do with the county, the city should be sent to all business owners by email. So we don't, just send it to us. You all have our emails. You have our licenses, you have our corporations, whatever, send it to us. We all want to know. Okay, the thing is on this ordinance, if it's only going to affect upcoming businesses, what upcoming businesses? You guys have already had an ordinance. There's no new businesses of my type to start, correct?
Well, this relates to any of the noise producing businesses outlined in the code, including many existing uses, any future plans, and also only in the county.
So why would we pass all these ordinances for future businesses when we know that there's already a lawsuit going on with the city and the county over the sound ordinances, okay, and over all the noise and the dust and so on and so forth? So you're going to only affect the new business and write them a ticket or do whatever you gotta do. What about the existing businesses? You guys are proposing all this, but only for people in the future? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's just like, it's an extension of what the county's already tried to do to close the businesses that they don't want, correct? From what
I mean, I guess from my perspective, you're kind of stuck on UTVs, and that's not like one of the biggest complaints we've had recently was a dog kennel. So I think you need to kind of think outside the box that it's not just about UTV businesses, right? And so anyways, that's just something I'm gonna throw out, like one of the biggest complaints we're hearing
yeah, sure.
recently is about a dog kennel.
And I am concerned about my business because what it's cost me.
Of course, right?
But if this ordinance is only going to affect the businesses in the future, what good is it? If you're going to have a dog kennel on this side of the street that's old, but it doesn't affect them, it only affects the new one, what is that going to do to the new guy? You can't do that. It's either you're in or you're out. Doesn't make any sense. I mean, great, we want to be grandfathered in. Yeah, I don't want to have to deal with any of this. But what about the next guy? If he comes in, so now you guys are writing tickets or fines for a new business, when you guys can't even email us to know we're an old business. Seriously, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And that's just off of this discussion. That's not even part of my discussion I want to go over today. Does that make sense? Only going to be in the future and not the old?
Can I make a comment on that? Just
Yeah.
as a good way to look at it is in the same way that building codes change at whatever every 4 years or however often they are updated, it can't retroactively apply. It can only apply to new ones.
And I
That's how
hold
I
a
look
B2
at it.
unlimited.
Say again?
I hold a B2 unlimited contractor's license in Nevada. Building code is not a very good example
Okay.
of two businesses that make noise or doesn't make noise.
No, I was just thinking
Talking
as
about
far as code
code
updates
updates.
and
Code
applying
updates.
to
Updating our
one
land
big,
use
one business as opposed to the other. If a new one is built or a new building is built, then they have to follow that current code and not the old one. And something may apply to the new
But
building
if the
being
code
built,
is,
but not the
if
old
the
one.
code is stringent enough or the earthquakes change, the other buildings have to be updated, like water heaters, so on. So it still has to go
If they
through.
make a significant change to their building, in the same way that this code would be implemented, if a significant change is made, then you would have to follow the new
Right.
code.
It just didn't make any sense after we get here. We think that this is going to affect us. And then once you guys start talking, it's not going to affect the existing businesses. I mean, I stopped the business trip today to come home to be here to make sure that we understood what was going on. I was in Price when I turned around to come back because I didn't want to watch it on the Zoom meeting. But that's what I'm saying. If it's gonna only affect the new but not the old, That doesn't make any sense.
Can't
What
legally.
about the current company who's?
Yeah, sure. What if you wanna move?
All of the-
New site plan applications would be under the new
So
regulation.
But I'm existing.
Right,
So that wouldn't apply.
another clarification, this does not affect the business license, this is about land use. So another example, which is specific to land use, we have houses in the city and in the county that have setbacks that don't conform to our current code. We didn't require the people who own those homes or live in those homes to tear down their home and build different setbacks.
Right, I understand.
We move it forward. And that's what this is related to. If there was a new use of this type that went into the county, this would apply. If you wanted to move your building and go to a different part of the county and it was one of these, this would apply. But the same applies to selling your home, building a new home. And that is just something that's very specific. There's no fines. There's no tickets related to this. This is not related to your business license. This is related to the use on the ground, like a dog kennel, or there's other car wash facilities. There's many types of businesses. And again, the goal is just as we require uses to screen, things with trees and walls, this is screening noise from the surrounding residential areas. And it's similar to how we would do any sort of land use code and have done land use codes in this county and anywhere, going back. So
We understand
just
that.
want to clarify, it's not the business license. It doesn't affect the business license. There's no ticket or fines.
Okay. But everybody here today, when they walked in here, we all thought this was going to happen to us. There's nothing anywhere on any of the agenda or any of the paperwork that says existing businesses will not be affected. That's not what, so we're all here. We've all turned around. I mean, I had some very, very pressing business in Salt Lake today, but this was more important because this is my business, right? So it would have really been nice to know that it wasn't going to affect the existing businesses.
It's a great point, but now we have the opportunity to clarify that's the land use code setting. It is use on the ground, not business license.
And
Thank
then
you for your
can I
comments.
ask you guys to please just put us in the future, let us know what's going on.
It's great.
For the last year and a half, I've been fighting with the county and city, ordinance after ordinance after ordinance. There's never a notification, there's never a call to the company, to us. We'd all love to know what's going on, and we'd all love to be involved.
Thank you very much. So, Cricket?
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm Cricket, spelled like the bug, green spelled like the color, former planning member. And I would like to clarify that while you guys, usually what you're going over is something that the council has sent to you to approve that they've already got in their mind. So for them not to be involved, they were involved before this got here, especially since the county attorney's been on it. And secondly, you don't want outfitters to be upset when they are named in your title, not car dealerships, not car washes, not automotive. You're specifically saying outfitters. So don't try to play down that you shouldn't have upset outfitters when we're named. And I'm no longer an outfitter. So that's just my that's just my comment, not a question. Thank you.
We're all just taking the turns as we see, in the order as we see fit. My name is Jennifer Johnson. I have a whole lot of prepared statement because of what I read. And I echo the fear coming in here and what we were all up against. So I'm just letting you know I'm going to try and go off script here a little bit, but Jennifer, Jennifer, Johnson, JOHNSON. I'm the co-owner of Epic 4x4 Adventures. I'm a UTV tour operator. I'm located at the corner of Highway 191 and 400, or 4th East, as it's sometimes commonly known. Myself. So first of all, there was no language in there to suggest that we aren't impacted. And so to come in here and learn that is a tremendous relief, but it doesn't change the fact that some of us don't own our locations. And we are going to be facing this when we move. And I don't see any path to compliance at all. As I read it, outfitters must be located and accessed from a principal arterial highway as defined by the Unified Transportation Master Plan, but
Because the noise and congestion caused by vehicles in a line is incompatible with surrounding neighborhoods, we must be located adjacent to off-road trailheads. I am not certain, because I did try to read the Unified Transportation Master Plan, and you can't see the maps online. I'm not certain, but I don't think that there is a, major arterial near a trailhead, which means we cannot be in compliance. If I'm forced to move, if my landlord says, I'm gonna have another use for this, I don't know where I could be in compliance, and this affects my livelihood significantly. If there is no specific area for an overlay, how does it work? I don't know how that works, but if it's location by location must meet all of this criteria, there's no way to be in compliance. And then it allows for arbitrary approval of businesses. And it's subjective. There's no line where I could go in and say, I know my business can survive because these are the rules that they have to play by. It means I have to always figure out how to play by yours. And that doesn't seem like the way that government should operate. We've collectively, I feel like that we've been a community of outfitters that have tried to show good faith to the county. Some outfitters have but taken time from their business to support legislation that is centered around educating visitors. Epic has moved our equipment inside and drilled holes so that we can have the noise mitigated. We're doing what we can to be good community members, but every time that an ordinance comes out, it feels destructive to us. It doesn't feel inclusive to us. There aren't real solutions that are being presented. There are stop them, and it's going to solve the problem. And it's not. It's just not. We need real answers. I agree. And I want to be a good community member, but just where it always feels like you're out, and I don't mean you individually, but you're just out to destroy us. You don't want us. The distaste for my business is palpable. And the hate in the community has had threats to my life and my equipment. It's serious. What's going on in this community? Serious.
That was the 3 minutes.
Sorry, I guess I don't feel like any amount of public comment is going to change what is intended to do here, but statements like, because the noise and congestion caused by vehicles in a line is incompatible with surrounding neighborhoods, we must be located in other areas. I think you're treading very closely to doing indirectly that which you cannot do directly, which is keep me off the roads. If you make me be in a certain spot, there's no ordinance that says I can't run all through the neighborhoods and go right back to where I started, or that the trail I want to do is actually on the other side of town. This doesn't solve the problem. So anyway, I want to be involved too, and we want to be good community members.
Thank you very much for your comments. Sir Nelson?
I'm looking for this paperwork I grabbed. I got something online earlier. Hi, I'm Dave Hellman, DAVEHELLMAN, Hellman. I'm a citizen of you heard. Anyways, I had a bunch of questions, but I can't read through this fast enough. Kind of the A, B,
Do
and
you want
C.
to pause and ask your questions and then?
Yes, can I ask
That's
a
what we've
couple
kind of been
questions?
doing. So
Okay.
questions, we'll go back,
Questions.
we'll do questions and then we'll read comments.
All right,
Yeah?
so the A, B, and C, my personal questions are you guys, I know you guys aren't making all the decisions or whatever, but you guys make decisions, do your thing. An A outfitter is somebody who trailers to the trailhead and has electric vehicles. A B outfitter is somebody who drives to the trail and a U drive follow along tour. And a C outfitter doesn't have ATV, UTV, small plate vehicles. So Dan, Mick, Jen's Jeep rentals, correct? Is that correct?
And can you clarify the difference between the land use code changes that are being proposed for recommendation tonight versus the changes to the business, the definitions? Because this is not, yeah.
Yeah, so the outfitter A, B, C, and D, those will be new definitions included in Article 10.
So you're gonna change all the
As an
definitions again?
As an update to Article 10. I think the idea was that they're going to be broken down into these categories
Smaller
now.
categories. So is ideally, my one main question I came up with is your ideal outfitter an A outfitter? Electric vehicles, trailer to trailhead?
There's no ideal, and also the Article 10 changes, which is the definitions that you're talking about, those are in draft form, but those are actually not being voted on in terms of recommendation tonight. So there's opportunity to, be part of the process to evolve those before they come to public hearing.
Okay.
But again, given the concerns that have been raised by residents along these arterial highways, these highway commercial zones, the intent of the land use code is through the use on the ground. How can we mitigate that impact so that, we can reduce conflict, which is separate from anything related to the definitions of these different outfitter types.
Okay.
So just so that's clear. I feel like that might not be totally clear, but
Totally
they're two
clear.
different public hearings.
Okay, so we know the biggest intersection, that's the biggest problem is I'm gonna call it the graveyard intersection on the way up to Sand Flats, the Hell's Revenge, that's where our biggest traffic is. I agree with what Sean said and a lot of other things, so I'm not gonna go into that. My main thing I wanna think for everybody to think about that's gonna see this is everybody wants us to trailer up there. I know we've kind of beat this with a stick, but I really thought about it today and did some numbers. I'm going to say there's approximately 10 companies. I think they're in a lawsuit. There are ATV companies in town. I think there's actually 12 companies. One 6 vehicle fleet going up to Hell's Revenge, which we're allowed to do at a time, a little 6 vehicle fleet. If you put 6 vehicles on 2 trailers pulled behind 2 big diesel trucks, that ends up being 135 feet of vehicle length on the road with a very small gap between the vehicles. On top of that, the people who are driving those 6 machines are in cars behind them for another 150, 200 feet with safe driving length. That's one tour going up to Hell's Revenge. Most companies have 2 fleets going out 2 to 3 times a day. That is hundreds and hundreds of vehicles, not just little side-by-sides. Now we're talking massive trailers. Can anybody at this table right now tell me that they have taken a 40-foot trailer and hung a right-hand turn from Mill Creek or at Dave's Corner Market with a 40-foot trailer with 3 side-by-sides on it? You have to have 6 side-by-sides, that's 2 40-foot trailers. When you get to the top after this, so just think about this, from about, 8 o'clock in the morning till about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you're gonna have fleets of massive trucks and trailers going up and down the roads that we want quieter. And we're talking cars stopped from Dave's Corner Market, big massive trailers that have to go into the other lane to make a right-hand turn. Once you get to the top, each one of those fleets is going to take up, I did in my head, about 300 feet of parking. So you get 10 companies up there at a time. That's 3,000 feet of parking if they only bring 1 fleet up at a time. So now you're talking 2 fleets. High Point Hummer gets 3 fleets out there at a time. As long as they have a guide plus 5 followers, we can do that because that's what we did. We made it smaller. All these vehicles, I know the A's and the electric vehicles that you guys want trailered up there, people want trailered up there, are supposed to be quieter. You start pulling diesel trucks, big diesel trucks who are burning way more fuel because you have to come to a stop, whether you're making a right-hand turn or going straight up. Massive fuel being burnt, pulling a big truck with a long trailer with all these machines on it, pulling it up that hill. Noise pollution, actual pollution. You're talking in fuel and the cost for each company, it's about a $500,000 investment between 2 new trucks on a small company. High Point Hummer, they have to get 5 trucks. 5 trailers. Where are you going to park 5 40-foot trailers? Yes, they have that little lot and they have their lot. There is no room in downtown for all these companies to get enough trailers and employees. And if we don't have the whole entire fleet following us up there of the people who are going to drive those vehicles, taking their own personal vehicles all the way up there, we're going to have to get vans, more employees and vans to park up there. And if an employee has to go up there and sit up there with a truck and trailer, because there's only 1 guide for 2 vehicles that are going up. Now you have a guy sitting up there for 3 hours. He's going to turn that truck and trailer, go back into town, go work for 2.5 hours of work, and then turn around and come back up to the lot. It's going to be, I'm probably past my 3 minutes, but I'm just saying it's going to be a very, what you guys think is small being a problem by doing trailering up there is going to create a way bigger nightmare. And if that happens, I'm going to sit back. I'll take my big diesel truck and my 40-foot trailer and figure out how to make that right-hand turn. But thank you, probably like
Thank
7
you for your
minutes. Who knows? Okay.
And one thing, I just want to
Go ahead.
clarify, and because you raised this, and I think, again, this is an opportunity to go deeper into the ordinance. So under, on page 10 of the packet, under 3.2.3 commercial use standards, where we have section 5, outfitters, guide service and facilities, the definitions would be a separate public hearing, which means there will be ample opportunity to submit comments, revisions, and so on related to those definitions. There are things that are consistent across them. Those are things like screening, outdoor storage, and so on. Those are the land use things on the ground. And then in terms of the definitions of any different standards based off of some of those definitions, those would be a different conversation essentially. So this is presupposing those definitions as written, but the definitions of what would fit into those categories has not been decided and will not be recommended tonight one way or another.
Okay, because yeah, I mean, there was definitions I read them and it was very like, now we're just gonna totally segregate these people. I don't know what's the word, being biased, or the proper word is.
And the reason is there's, as Trish noted, this ordinance change includes potential recommendations on things that don't just relate to this specific use. I understand most people here are here commenting from that perspective, but you know, this affects bars and nightclubs and taverns.
Oh, I
indoor
understand
recre-
that.
Oh, no, I know
None
that.
of the
I'm just
bars and
helping
nightclubs are the county's not wanting people, the bars and nightclubs to pull trailers with machines through town.
Totally.
So
My
I mean,
point is
I
the
just feel
definition of that.
really sad if that actually becomes more popular to pull trailers up. The people that are complaining on that corner now are gonna be way more upset than they are currently.
I understand. I'm clarifying just so that it's clear what is and isn't being discussed tonight, just so
Okay.
that there's no risk
It was-
of miscommunication or understanding.
Yeah.
Thank you for your
Awesome.
comments.
Thank you.
Dave. All right.
Hi, my name's Kent, K-E-N-T, last name is Green, G-R-E-E-N. Reading through this with, by the way, thank you for the opportunity to talk. It's gonna make it very difficult for new businesses to even open. I mean, it's virtually impossible the way you guys got this written up. And I don't know who wrote it up. But I do have some questions on your land use code is number one, is the way this map reads. Have you done noise tests from point A to point B on all the businesses, such as the motels, such as the car dealerships, such as Maverick, such as the gym? Have you done all those studies on noise and how it affects people's health? Or is it just UTV noise you're worried about and the highway noise?
There are studies about noise pollution having.
Okay, where are the stats on that?
If the stats are, I mean, again, I don't want to go into the specifics right now, but I will just say in general, there is ample studies that are available through peer-reviewed sources that show noise in general. This is not specific to any type of use. Noise in general at a decibel level is the issue that is being considered and not in any individual use.
But has it been done in Grand County?
Well, it's consistent with any type of
Well,
use.
no, it
that-
isn't, 'cause we
it's
live in
a-
a canyon.
I don't want to go back and forth. I'm just saying.
You're
it's
snapping at me,
consistent.
so I'm snapping back.
Oh, I'm not snapping. I'm
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
just make sure we're all on the same page. It's having to do with the decibel level, which is what our land use code references. And again, that is consistent across any use. The decibel level is the thing that's considered for those things.
But
I have a question for you.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're going to continue the comments. I just wanted to make sure that we're clarifying.
But then another thing is we have HB 180, which, you know, this, our county commission seems not to want to work. It has been implemented and we haven't given that time to be able to see how our noise level and things going to happen. And the education is on side-by-side users. But I sent this to Senator Bramble and he's looking at it right now for me. And he's actually 100% behind the businesses here in Moab. I just wanted to be aware that Senator Bramble's got a hold of this and he's looking it over because he is very concerned about the UTV businesses being discriminated against. And even though you're saying it isn't, but it is. You know, there's discriminatory things happening in this packet in my book, but that's my personal opinion. Okay. But I would like to see the county do noise testing on all the businesses on the corridor. It is effective with the 200-foot buffer zone. Is that a possibility? Because it's really hard to talk, and I'm not pointing at you guys, because I know there's a lot of anti-UTV people on the commission and probably here too. You know, so, because I've heard comments and statements on that. So it's unfair. It really is. And trying to implement this on a new business is just, you're making it virtually impossible. Thank you.
Can I ask a clarifying question? When you say the county commission doesn't want to see HB 180 work, what does that mean?
What that means is that you're not giving it a chance to work.
I wouldn't state that at all. We just had the
'Cause that's
presentation
January-
on it, right?
January of
And the
22, you did get some
presentation actually,
misinformation on it,
right,
too.
and so I think we just want the right information. I think we're very excited for it to
Oh,
work.
yeah,
It
I
was
am too.
just, the presentation was a little, we were taken aback because it's like, oh, that's not what we expected,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And
Well, the
so-
phone calls I got, trust me, I know.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, we need to let HB 180 work.
No, I
Um,
100%
And then we can go back to
agree.
the table and say, okay, this is not working and this
Right.
is not working. But I do know that Grand County or Moab City, I don't know, has hired a lobbyist to, and they're already talking to legislation about noise decimals, excuse me. Thank you. Trying to go to the state, federal level at 96. But they're also trying to implement a speed for UTVs only.
I have no,
Okay, so
I
that must
have
be Moab
no-
City, but we're already aware that's happening.
no,
and-
I have no
yeah.
knowledge of any of that.
Yeah,
So
but-
wherever you're getting your information, you might want to,
Well, that came from the guy from Moab City, so.
okay,
yes.
well, at a county level, I have no knowledge of that
Well, we're
whatsoever.
kind of included Moab, Grand County, so.
Oh, okay.
So you might.
I don't
wanna
work
talk-
for
You
this
might
thing.
want to talk to the lobbyist, tell him to keep his mouth shut, so. Thank you.
You can absolutely.
I'm sorry to add in.
Go ahead, grab the chair, man.
Name's Mike McCurdy, MIKE-MCCURDY. In a short form, it seems like we'd be stifling business. I mean, most of our smaller local businesses can't survive a move. I mean, if codes were put in place, if these codes were put in place, they wouldn't have the ability to, I'm going to use parallels exactly. I've helped them move 3 times over the last few years. On their next move, which will happen, the landowner's land is worth sizably more money than he pays rent. It already is. So when he moves again and I help him move, he will that day go out of business because he can't, one, afford the next land, being a small business owner. 2, the added cost to the business owner, that's going to be a direct cost to them to follow along. I don't see that as a feasible. I don't see that feasible going, and not just here at Scratch, in the sense of most every UTV business in town. They don't own the land, and it's more valuable to the next person. It's kind of land values in general. This will come up future. It may not be a problem right now, and it may not affect businesses right now, but it's going to affect the business tomorrow. As soon as he gets kicked out because he can't afford rent this year, the next guy that moves in that same exact lot is going to have to conform to these, but he's not going to be able to. He might be able to afford it, but it's going to put another barrier to a business coming into town. And don't get me wrong, I like it when new businesses come to town in any sense, be it UTV or not. I'm pro-business, as it's well known, but it's just things to look at. That was my comment. Seems like a long ball play against, maybe not intentionally against, intentionally brought up against Moab owners or Moab small businesses, but it will play out in Moab ownership, Moab owned businesses in general. It will be very directed at small business owners in the area. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments, Mike. Is there anyone else in the room who's here to make a comment during this public hearing? Go ahead.
My name is Jason Perriott, JASONPARRIOTT. I run a hair salon here in Moab, Utah since 1996. We are also circa 1885 first automobile and the first automobile repair shop in Moab. Right down here at the ice cream shop. I've listened to everyone say, and I understand you guys are designing what the county has asked you to design. The one thing, nobody in this county, I don't care if you're right, left, just moved here, you've been here for 80 years. No one's talking to each other. The biggest thing I've heard today. Nobody's talking to anybody. We're having the same problems with our own personal property, just trying to get a home in. There's no discussion. It's, we're gonna do this because of this agenda. I just want to remind all of you, you have neighbors. You have neighbors that have been here a lot longer than you. You have neighbors that have worked their tails off, 2 and 3 jobs to stay here through the 90s, when I thought it was going to be impossible. You move next to the airport. Don't move the airport. You try to work with the people and you try to make decisions that don't hurt your future. I understand you make the rules for anyone new coming in, but that doesn't change the fact that some guy trying to feed his kids' mouths with a dog kennel or with a pig farm or with an automotive or UTV. He's trying to make a difference and trying to move forward. And everything that I see that keeps happening is trying to invite big business, giant business, because they're the ones who can afford it. So in your decision to make this for the county council to look at and approve, keep in mind, these are your neighbors you're talking about, your future neighbors, the people who ultimately are playing softball with your kids, soccer, and everything else. And it is your job in that to take in all those considerations, not just, oh, well, we'll design this and this is the layout we'll give you. Think about where these places are. The highway is not, and you're going to run into problems too, because one thing that nobody has brought up, I'll be quick, they're on the state highway still. Look at the maps. Utah State Highway turns right down here at first, goes right up past Milts, goes all the way up Mill Creek, back to the highway. It is still, until they change that, state highway. So you have to look deeper and look backwards before you can go forwards and think about your neighbors. Thank you.
For your comments. Okay, we are going to move to online comments.
Can I ask one question really fast? Can you clarify your notification process, your when you put your agenda out, things like that? We're new to this.
Yeah.
So we really want to know how you notify people of what's on the agenda, how early that comes out, so we can research how these things will affect us.
Yeah, it's a great question. Here's what I'm going to recommend. We'll give a really quick update, and then maybe the planning and zoning department can provide a more thorough update over Facebook and on Grand County Connects tomorrow. And that way you have a reference point in the future. Okay. Do you mind just giving a quick overview of the state notice?
Yeah,
How we
so
have notice?
public hearings have to be noticed 10 days in advance of the meeting. So, so that just goes up on our website. And if you can go onto the, I think it's the Agenda Center, where you can sign up to be notified when there's public hearing notices that are posted, and then you'll get an email.
Okay, and
So-
the agenda, how early does that come out?
And then the agenda has to come out 24 hours prior to the meeting, but we always post our agendas by the
72
latest
hours.
Friday or at very latest Saturday morning. But Friday is usually kind of generally when we get our agendas posted for the Monday meeting.
How come it came out today?
I posted it on Friday. I posted it on Friday, and I do apologize. It was brought to my attention that our new platform that we're using for posting agendas, it didn't actually publish to our website until Saturday morning, but it was like 12 in midnight, Friday night, 12 in the morning on Saturday. So by Saturday morning, it was up on the website.
And there's
I only saw it today and I
Wow.
looked for it
all
all
the
week.
information is available on the state website. And I think what we'll do, because it'll be easier to make sure that this is broadly viewed is we'll post an update tomorrow through the planning and zoning department, and that way we can share that widely and clarify that confusion. Okay, so Nick's iPhone, I see your hand up, and then what we're going to do, similar to in this room, is if you'd like to make a comment and you're on Zoom, can you please put in the chat, I'm here to make a comment, and we will call you in the order that we see them. I'm going to quickly pause and just say, it's 6:30 and we normally do citizens to be heard, but given the fact that we are in the middle of a public hearing, we're going to defer that to the end of the public hearing. We'll break. If you're here to make a comment after the public hearing comments, we'll entertain that before we move on to any discussion. And that way we can keep the topic rolling. So Nick, just again, for those of you who are joining online, what we ask is that you please state and spell your full name, at which point I will start the clock for a 3-minute timer. And right now, because it may be hard to hear the timer and my phone's about to die, so I need somebody else to take on timekeeping for me. We'll come off mute and tell you at 3 minutes, your time is up, and ask that you wrap up your sentence. Okay, so Nick, I see you first. And then we'll call you in order.
Hey, what about people that are just on the phone?
It's 434.
Can't raise their hand.
I'll tell you, just to make things easier, I'll call you next, and then we'll continue down the line, and that way that doesn't get confused. So Nick, you could state your name, and then I will have 3 minutes. Who's on? Is someone else on time?
Yeah.
You are, Jen? I can. Okay, thank you. All right, go ahead, Nick, sorry.
Awesome. I'm Nick Oldham, spelled Oldham, like an elderly pig. Just a couple quick questions. It does seem like a last minute ordinance, and I'm curious who from each of the respective industries that are affected by this ordinance have been consulted. Like how have we collaborated with these industries to make an ordinance that will actually work without unintended consequences that maybe this commission or this board doesn't know about? Who from the restaurant industry, who from the bar and adult industry, who from the UTV industry. Are we collaborating yet, or are we still just pushing stuff through? And I also would really hope that as we're doing this, we have a clear view of how it'll work in the future. And so are we at the same time making a pathway forward where there'll be commercial land available near Sand Flats, near Cane Creek? How easy will it be for those residences to rezone commercial? And where are we implementing housing that will actually allow those people to move up and move forward with their lives? I really hope that this is a good opportunity to pause and collaborate with the community, and perhaps this is a good moment to pause once again and put this forward to an elected commission as opposed to a commission filled half with appointees. That's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment, Nick. So the person on the phone who spoke up earlier, we'll move to you just for the sake of clarity. And then I believe Mark said he was here to comment next, and then Brittany, and then anyone else, if you're here to comment, if you could pop that into the chat, that would be great. So
okay, hi, this is.
Go ahead.
Okay, hi, my name's Trevor Earhart. That's TREVORAREHART, and I own Cliffhanger Jeep Rental and been doing that now for close to 20 years. And like others, I was bounced, and we see how storefronts and where the economy is going towards Spanish Valley and on that highway commercial. And it feels like an attack on businesses when you guys come with these kind of setups to where we have to, it puts our backs against the wall that you're trying to really phase us out. We can see it, we feel it, we know it. We want to battle back because we don't want UTVs to be gone. We don't want our businesses to fail. we have no other choice than to show up to these meetings, drop everything we're doing, and all of a sudden now we have more time, more effort put into our businesses, more money. You guys are trying to drive it. You're making it more expensive to live there. Therefore, more money has to be charged, more taxes, more. I mean, it's got to quit. You guys are over governing what doesn't need to be governed. Highway commercial property was zoned highway commercial property years ago. Every single person that bought highway commercial property knew what they could do with that property. Anyone that bought residential property buffering a highway commercial property knew what they were buying and when they were buying it, what could possibly go on that property. Now we're trying to make different zones and we're moving the goalposts again on something that we're calling, you know, in the fight of keeping the noise levels down, the fight of putting businesses out of business. There's no way new businesses can come in and absorb the costs that they're going to do. And it won't be small businesses. It'll be great big giant corporations with lots of money to back it. And that isn't what Moab wants. That's not what anybody in Moab wants. Please don't move the goalposts. Please don't continue with this volume, decibel nonsense. And let's just all get along. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mark, you're up next. Mark?
Can't hear you, Mark.
Yeah.
You got,
You must be muted.
No, it's not muted.
you might be muted on your end of the phone.
But he isn't apparently.
Okay. Mark, if you want to try calling in, I'm not sure what happened there on your end. Brittany?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch base with everyone. My comment mostly goes back to what Jason and Brenner and Trevor just talked about. I feel like communication and collaboration goes a long way. And so I feel like when people are giving their comments and I see like Emily just like, nah, who cares what she's saying on this? Or if Trish is not paying attention, I feel like that.
I'm writing notes, Brittany. I'm taking notes so that I can pass them along.
Well, what I'm saying is I feel like if we're not willing to be compromising and we're not going to go to the table and really, really focus in on one another, I think that that's an important thing for everyone. So I really felt like with Trish, when Brenner was talking, you were really into that and you were really, really focused in on that because you felt his real concern there. And so I feel like if you guys can see that these business owners, really, that's food on their table. That is food on their table. That's their kids going to school. And so when these things and these decisions are being made, you got to realize that you're really playing with people's lives here. So that's kind of why I'm like, you know, I understand that we are worried. And that's why I'm like, you know, these homeowners and these people, that the noise, everyone needs to work together. This is an important thing. But to broad brush this, that's pretty hardcore, some of these things that are written in this. And so that's kind of why I wanted to pop out here, because I see everyone in this and it's hard for everybody. But this is a lot on a lot of people's lives here. And I really think that you guys need to stop and re-go to the table. Don't make any choices yet, because this is an important decision and it's going to affect a lot of people. And like Trevor said, like Brenner said, like Jason said, a ton of people. I mean, there's not even commercial property available for these people to move their businesses. So I just want you to kind of really sleep on all this and make sure that we're not making a choice. And Trish, you're not running back and saying, well, let's just go ahead and do this. You know, that's a concern. So anyway, I second everybody's comments when it comes to being concerned. And I think we can all work together.
Thank you for your comments, Brittany. I will just clarify that everyone on the planning commissioner is a volunteer. We are giving up now, going on more than 2 hours of our evening to be here, to listen, to try and educate, to hear the questions, to respond, and to participate. And I don't think we need to attack people personally in our comments in order to feel heard. And I would appreciate it if we could refrain from personal attacks in future comments for the rest of the evening. Mark, did you get your audio working? Want to test it? Nope. Sorry, bud. We'll post the, is there a phone number for the Zoom call? Can we post that?
It's on the agenda.
I can send
Just-
it out in the chat.
Let's put it in the chat. Mark, if you're able to call in directly on your phone as opposed to over the Zoom chat, we'll take your comment. Is anyone else online hoping to make a comment this evening? I only see the 3 hands that were raised. I see Slick Rock Off-Road Rental has come off mute. So at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see a little microphone. If you have headphones plugged in, you might see a headphone. If you're not connected to audio, you might see headphones. So look at the bottom left of your Zoom screen and there's a little arrow. Click on that arrow and make sure that you're connected to the right sound input, and that way we can hear you. Or you can call in on the phone number that was just put in the chat. So if for some reason we can't hear you, those are 2 different options to troubleshoot, okay?
It's barely.
Barely, if you can turn up your mic or
Yeah.
there's something blocking it.
No, unfortunately, we can't hear you, but I'll tell you what, if you grab your cell phone and you call in, we should be able to hear you. And Zoom is just not cooperating, I guess, on that end right now.
All right, I'll call in.
Oh,
Let's get
yeah, no, that's better.
Whatever you were doing, can you get a little closer to the mic?
Yeah, is it better?
Should we try?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, so I got a number of questions, a lot of which I don't necessarily can answer.
Gosh, I'm so sorry. It is completely muffled and we cannot hear you. And if you wouldn't mind calling in, we'll make sure to call you up. And I'm so sorry about that. It's real muffled. We can't hear your questions.
No problem.
Apologize.
Pieces.
What's the number? I got it.
Okay, is anyone here to make a comment? Okay, is anyone here to make a comment for citizens to be heard at our 6 o'clock standard citizens to be heard? That is a comment on something that is not on the public hearing, is not a public hearing, or is not on the agenda.
What you guys can do about all these stop noise pollution signs that are on our stop signs that are now they're gluing to the stop signs, which actually takes away from the reflectiveness of them and it's now become a safety hazard. Or what happens when somebody goes through an intersection and kills somebody because the sign didn't say stop. It said stop noise pollution. What is the county doing about that? Exactly.
I think that's, I don't know what the planning commission, but I have no idea. But
Fix some of the signs, because I mean, we pay a lot of money for that. And there's somebody going around on stilts or something, because I can't reach half the signs in town to tear those stickers off, which I've taken hundreds of those stickers off. I've made trips up and down River Road to take those stickers off. And I feel like there's someone close to someone in the county commission, I'm not gonna say names, that's involved in the sticker process.
I would recommend making a comment to the county commission, because I mean, this is the planning commission.
Oh, sorry.
We are
Well,
recommending volunteer body that deals with land use code issues.
Well, is it a sheriff's issue
I
actually?
think that would probably be a sheriff or city
sheriff.
police or potentially.
Yeah,
state
I would
patrol.
recommend calling Steve White directly, and I can give you his number if you
Oh,
want.
he's my expert.
Okay, perfect.
And
Yeah, talk to Steve.
I'm sorry, we can't help more.
And
but
I
it's
can
literally not
I'll pass
something
that
we-
along.
4359, is that the, okay, Bob Fraser, go ahead and come off mute on your phone, not on your computer, and make your comments.
All right, can you hear me now?
We can, thank you so much for calling back in.
All right, so I've got a number of questions. I've got an echo on my side, so. All right,
I don't necessarily need answers to my questions this evening. I just want it more for thought. With respect to the OBO, what criteria is being used to designate which is or isn't a noise producing business? Is it a long duration noise, a loud noise, or an ATV noise? What study has been performed to base a criteria upon? Why are some noise producing businesses and or facilities exempt in the overlay? With respect to 4.10.1, what noise produces unwanted health effects upon Grand County residents and visitors? Is there an established upper and lower noise exposure limit, as has been established in standards by people or entities like OSHA, MSHA, NTSB to protect the public and or employees? Has there been any study to determine how any detrimental noise exposure is present in Grand County based on evidence and data based on these established standards and health criteria? Is it an exposure of one event, 100 events, 1 minute, 10 events, 1 month, 60 decibels, 100 decibels, or 92 decibels? Very arbitrary. For what duration and how many events in total? Has a study been performed showing how much Grand County geographical structures increase negative health effects and well-being? Talking about the bounce of the noise between the rims. General comment, it appears these graphs unfairly target off-road tourism, car washes, and auto repair businesses. Since these graphs negatively affect businesses, livelihoods, and employment, it seems prudent to implement any changes based on facts, studies, and evidence. Business affected by these changes are not able to advertise and market their businesses due to setbacks and physical barriers. Is this a violation of the First Amendment freedom of speech? These changes appear to align with a pattern of Grant County Council behavior targeting specific industries and businesses, resulting in unnecessary lawsuits and expenses the Grant County taxpayers shouldn't have to bear. These drafts and changes are not well-based or studied, and if implemented, is excessively burdensome, untenable, expenses result in business devastation. Seems to be based on belief and feelings, and appears to be punitive and vindictive in nature. This needs to stop.
Thank you so much for your comments. Did I hear you say correctly that you were done? I don't want to cut you off. Okay, thank you very much, Bob, for your comments. Mark, you trying again? Mark, are you on your?
No way, we'll call in.
If you, Mark, if you go off Zoom on your phone, so close the Zoom app on your phone. First, write down the number in the chat. Close the Zoom app in your phone, and then call that number. I think we lost him. Okay. Anyone else here to make a comment who hasn't had an opportunity to comment already? Is there anyone in this room who hasn't had a chance to comment who'd like to make a comment?
I'll comment.
Okay.
Not about the issue at hand. My name's Steven Stocks.
Oh, this is, so it's not about the public hearing?
No, 6 o'clock, citizens to be heard.
Oh, on it. No, it's okay. I called it back. Go for it,
Okay,
Stephen.
just real quick, my name's Steven Stocks. I'm going to be your Grand County Attorney-elect. I've had a wonderful opportunity to chat with most of you, meet you in person. There'll be a transition in January. It'll take me a little bit of time to get to know everyone. It'll be a process. There's a lot that the county attorney does. There'll be a lot of things that I'll be taking over on for the entirety of the office. So I want to let you guys know you can reach out to me, ask me questions, send out any things that you guys have. There'll likely be a lot of things that will transition over from Ms. Lone's office into my new administration. So it's important that you guys reach out anytime you want. I've been foolish enough to give out my personal phone number. So if you guys have any questions, reach out to me and look forward to working with you.
That's one of the deals. You got to give out your personal phone number.
It's already out there.
Sorry. We all have it. Sorry.
I don't think we have my. Okay. Here's what we're gonna do. I first want to make sure any open questions have been answered. I know we've tried to address the open questions that they've come up. Honestly, we've tried to make sure that everyone feels heard and has a chance to feel like they have a better understanding of this. Were there any questions raised that anyone on the body heard that was not answered? You have a question that
I
wasn't
do,
answered.
I'm sorry. I know I spoke before, but I'm wanting to know if the county has looked into the infrastructure on what they're requiring these outfitters to do to trailer to the trailheads and things like that. They've actually gone up there and looked at our parking situation because, you know, as Dave pointed out, you know, there's virtually no parking up there. When you get also the private sector, you know, because I know the county, and I could be wrong, has not put a cent
Just
into-
gonna pause there because what we are not considering is any requirement or mandate tonight. We're not considering the definitions. I mean, honestly, we are not considering the definitions. It's not something that has been provided to this body.
Well, and that's also, it wouldn't affect, there's no requirement, we're not implementing a requirement to trailer.
And
We're not
and in
doing
the
that.
past, any of the time we've talked about trailering, let's say we talk about Poison Spider, we're perfectly aware that there is not room to to mandate that. So, you know, the discussions we've had, and this was a long time ago, it's like, we understand the limitations of trailering. You know,
So
so
the county looking in, you know, into that in the future.
not that I know of. Again, not to my knowledge. And I'm not totally clueless. I try to keep up with what's going on.
And just to clarify, you know, the folks here, we have the ordinance, we have, you know, staff report, but any additional work that's happening, you know, to look at something like that, this is not being considered by this body and it's not information that has been provided by this body as consideration of this. So just want to clarify where to go to get those answers.
Have you identified the neighborhoods that have been being affected by this?
There's a map that has been shared that would show the buffers along the highway commercial zone, which is the arterial highway as defined by the UDOT Transportation Master Plan. And that's all in the packet.
Just in the county, but not in the city, correct?
Not in the city. Nothing of here is being considered for the city. Nothing in here would apply to the city if it were passed by the county commission. It only applies to parcels within county boundaries, unincorporated Grand County boundaries.
So you're talking Spanish Valley?
The boundary is generally what,
South
south
Noah.
of the bowling alley, northeast down to the county boundary and north of the bridge generally, and then out 128 if you go beyond the bridge. That's generally speaking, you know, what.
It's, yeah, it's just based on the
South
zoning,
Everett to the
it's just
county
based on the highway.
Thank you.
zoning.
Did you have a question that wasn't
It
answered?
was directly related to what you just talked about.
Okay.
It's the principal arterial highway. I just wanted to know where I can find the zoning maps and that information so I can look into it. and
The
see where
zoning
I'm
map? The principal arterial highway and that definition.
It's confusing, like what it means, like do you have to be like a road off of that highway, is that what it's saying?
So, and this is something that's actually applies, it's already in the land use code. This is a concept that's already in the land use code.
Yeah.
UDOT has different designations for different roads, and then the county has different designations for roads below that. And so the concept of an arterial road comes from UDOT, and more specifically, there was just a transportation master plan adopted, led by UDOT. That is on grandcountyconnects.com. Thank you. If you want to look at that, grandcountyconnects.com. That's what defines it. And so what this is saying, and this is again very similar for many different commercial property types across the county, that you need to have access from that road as opposed to from like a side street or one of those smaller.
So it has to be a main public road to the highway. It
That's-
can't be like a residential.
That's the definition. And again, that's not unique to this. That's already in the land use code. All right. Any other questions that haven't been answered? Brittany, you have a question that hasn't been answered?
Mark Horowitz has one as well.
Okay, we'll answer Mark's question for Mark. This does not apply to the business license. So there is no, so legal non-compliant. If you are operating in one of these zones today, and let's say you are in a split zone and you have some portion of the business which goes over that buffer, what does your use distinction become under county law? Do you see that? The legal non-compliant will grandfather business become legal non-compliant. So we're not removing the use. The use is not removed from the land use code. So the use itself is not the non-conforming use. The question is the way that use is structured? How does that, what is that?
As far as legally non-conforming businesses would be regulated per Article 1 in the land use code.
But does it become a legal non-conforming use, or does it have a different distinction based on the fact that it has standards that would be related to an outdated version of the land use code?
So they list legally non-conforming lots as well as legally non-conforming uses in Article 1. As far as exactly how it would apply to the new code, I don't want to speak off the cuff at this moment.
So it would be similar to a house that has a setback that is smaller than current to the land use code, but the actual definition, Mark, I don't know the legal definition, and it sounds like staff is going to have to clarify exactly what terminology that would be applied under. So maybe we can email. We can look into that. Look into that. Okay. So you'll get follow-up from staff clarifying that use designation. Brittany, you have a question that hasn't been answered?
Yeah, so in the agenda, you guys have a lot of these different things that are kind of like striked out. Can you explain that and why these were, why they are not in there, or were these thoughts and then you decided against, or what is all of that?
So the language that's strike through is the old, it's whatever is going to be taken out of the existing in the code now. So it's just kind of it's the red line version. So we're trying to show the areas that are going to be deleted, the language is going to be deleted, and then what will be included in the new code.
So like if you have a flea market, no big deal. You don't have to have a bathroom or anything like that.
No, well, so flea market, the reason flea market is crossed out is because that's actually going to be regulated as a temporary use. It's not, generally, it's not a use that you would permit in a zone like as a permanent use. It's not a permanent use, and I think it was just a mistake in our code that it originally included flea markets as a permanent permitted use. It's really, it's a temporary use. And so flea markets are going to be moving into a different section in our code. That's why.
So that's the same with like the bed and breakfast and the residential units used for overnight accommodations.
Overnight accommodations are being crossed out because, so we're trying to kind of clean up that whole section as well. So all of the standards for overnight accommodations are addressed in our overnight accommodations overlay district. And that's in section 4.6, I believe, is the OAO section. So all of that stuff moved to a different section in the code, and that's why it's being removed here, because it doesn't apply anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Mike, did you have a question that didn't get answered?
No, sorry. The conforming use or putting this into place, the non-conforming use, is that tied to the land? Because it's not tied, I'm going to use Brenner here as an example.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's tied to the land that Brenner's on.
Right.
So Brenner's business is, okay, so is the next automotive shop that opens up after he's gone, are they going to have to put in place these restrictions?
It depends on if they change the use substantially.
If it just went to an automotive,
if it just
switched from an automotive shop to an
switched
automotive shop
ownership
by
and
someone else.
it was just switching ownership and it was staying the way it was, it's operating the same with the same intensity, nothing would have to happen.
The same way a hotel can be sold and the business license can be transferred, and that's allowed. But if they wanted to expand their, yes, exactly.
I want to speak to that because business licenses don't.
I'm sorry, one second. I'm sorry, 1 second. Thank you. The way that, so the use is the use on the ground.
Okay.
Right? So you can change who
Doesn't-
owns the use.
Yes.
Without changing the use itself. That helps clarify.
But very much so. Doesn't that make my hypothetical 2.5 acres on Resource Boulevard? Doesn't it make that my land worth less due to the fact that I can't put, or I have certain restrictions put on a new type of business? Or I own Brenner's lot, or just say that. I don't actually do. But my land is worth less because I am stuck with an automotive shop as its primary money making, or like its highest value. I'm stuck in that higher value. I can't sell it to another business of another type, be it allowed, a UTV company that's willing to pay more, because they would have to put in, the noise restriction stuff. Doesn't that make my land value less, like directly less?
If the use is commercial, it doesn't, I believe it doesn't matter. Like, we define commercial use. How does that, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think I
Because
can.
the grandfathering in of my nightly rental, when I owned one, skyrocketed the value because I was grandfathered in.
Right.
But this is narrowing that scope
No, we're not.
drastically, so it's going the other way now.
Well, we're not changing the entitlements. You're still entitled to have those commercial uses there, but it's just.
So you're hindering the next dude.
If they wanted to double the size of the building footprint.
Yeah, no, they want
That's
to build a
the
bigger
issue.
shop.
Well, but, and that's the way, and again, this is related to anywhere in our land use code that we have a evolution in the code based off of changing building standards, based off of changing populations and so on, then that applies in the same way. So what this is saying is, if you go and you expand the footprint, therefore, increasing the way that business may affect surrounding properties, that putting in some trees or a wall to block sound is a way of mitigating that increased impact. So it's looking at what's already on the ground. That what's on the ground is on the ground. And if it changes ownership, it stays on the ground. If somebody wants to majorly change that footprint, that use on the ground, then the heightened standards would apply as a way of mitigating that. Here's what I'm going to recommend.
Can I ask
a lot about this, but no, you're okay.
Questions.
I totally understand there's a lot about this that's convoluted, and honestly, I've been on this body for 6 years. There's still times I come across something and I'm like, I don't know. I mean, you've heard this tonight. What I would recommend, and part of this process, is hearing these comments so that we can provide diligence, so that we can strengthen any part of the code that is recommended to go forward, or even something that doesn't get a positive recommendation. And I think staff is hearing these questions and realizing there's a few areas that need further clarity before this goes to the county commission. That is a very common thing that goes before this body. We'll say, we recommend, X measures, but we want clarification on this, or we want staff to relook at this. So that's part of this process. So what I'll recommend is that staff has heard a lot of this information and will be continuing to update the staff notes and the information around this ordinance, as well as the body of the ordinance itself in any way that's substantial, such as ensuring we have definitions that are clear. What I don't want to do is there are some questions that we are not in a position to answer, but we want to capture the questions. So if we can't answer them tonight, we can sufficiently answer them going forward. I am going to move us forward. Jason, Brittany, you had another question. If you could state your question so we can capture it for the record, but we're going to pause any further discussion on the questions and then we'll go to Jason.
Do you mind if I just, and Mike, just on another level, a lot of things come to the county commission and then we have questions. We'll table it until we build. Does that make sense? So it's not a
to try to
tonight
coming
this
into county commission.
and then when it comes to county commission, it's a dead, like if we're questioning something, we need clarification, we'll table it and it moves on. We just passed an ordinance, the last county commission, that was tabled for months and months.
Yeah.
We just kept pushing it back because we didn't feel like it was ready.
It's a dialogue.
Yep.
It's, the civic process, it's dialogue. Does that basically answer your question though? The one that or at least you feel mollified?
At least I feel,
come back?
yeah, at least more areas for me to ask questions. So no worries.
Okay, Brittany, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, so part of the planning and zoning in your agenda here, part of that, it says that we have to basically be signed off on. In the all of the business licenses I've held, and I have to renew every single year. I have to have the fire commission sign off on it. I have to have the building inspector, planning and zoning, and there's a fourth one, and I'm losing the thought process. But the purpose of that is every single year we have to do that as business owners. So when we go and get every single year this whole process, planning and zoning could come back and say, well, hey, we need this done, or in our code, this happens. So what I'm a little bit concerned about in you're saying, hey, you're grandfathered in, no big deal. I would definitely say that if you're, what constitutes that change? Oh, it has to be this square footage change. What is the actual change that you're not going to come back and say, well, now we want you to do all this noise mitigation. We want you to do this dust control. We want you to do, you know, these 80-foot walls so no one can hear you. What is it that you're looking for, or what, you know, what's the standard? Because that business license is a real thing. And there again, we got to feed people.
Thank you for clarifying your comment. Is that something that, do you want to address 9.10.6C? Okay.
For sure. So when an applicant comes to my office to ask for a signature for a business license, there's a due diligence period that I do, whether it be a day or whatever I need to look into new applications that have been submitted or existing businesses. I do keep records of all the business licenses that I have signed. So also being in that office, I'll know if it is a new land use application that has occurred recently, or if there has recently been a new site plan application on that property. So I do a little due diligence to decide if it's an existing business. If it's an existing business and no changes occurred, it's as simple as a signature. There are no new regulations that business will have to meet. If it has had a new site plan application or it's a new land use application, then you will have known about that application process and those requirements at the time of that application. And the business license application that will come after will just be supplemental, and you'll know that in advance. So every year when you come for a signature, it's just going to be a new signature for the existing business.
Yep.
We're good with that?
Yeah, this has nothing to do with business licensing. So we can't require any new standards that you would have to implement for renewing your business license. It's a totally separate thing. The only time that this would ever be something you would need to, this is the only time you would need to be concerned is if you were amending your site plan, like for your commercial use, if you were doing some big expansion to your business, that would constitute a site plan application or a site plan amendment. And that would mean you would be going through this process of being required to build some kind of sound barrier, or maybe not, because you might be 200 feet up away. You might be outside that 200-foot buffer, so you might not have to do anything.
So Brittany, also, I'm sorry, Brittany, let me say one more thing that I have learned from the clerk's office as well. The signatures that are required for the business license, they only initially happen for a new business, either with a transfer of property ownership or a new land use application. So as I understand it recently from the clerk's office is you don't go around and get signatures from all those departments annually, that if you have an established business, it's just a renewal of that business license annually. So you start with the signatures the first time and get evaluated, and then each year supplemental to that, it's just a renewal of that business
With
license.
the clerk's office, not
Right.
going around and getting everybody's signatures.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and, yes, maybe, I don't know, but the city does.
They do.
This is the county.
We were just discussing that.
Fair enough.
City does.
Okay. I'm gonna move us forward in this discussion. I understand there's still some open questions. Those questions have been captured by staff. We will have opportunity to get further information from staff. This also will help inform staff's notes as it comes before the county commission. And Trish at the county commission level has heard these questions as well. And I'm sure would do her diligence to ensure that that's in her report back to the county commission at the next meeting. So with this, I'm going to move us forward. We've had an opportunity for everyone to make a comment who wanted to. We've had additional opportunity for any questions that anybody had to clarify the text of the ordinance and how it applies to existing businesses or future businesses. So we are going to move forward, and I'm going to briefly explain what the rest of this process looks like this evening so that you all know. Now that we've had a chance to have any clarifying questions, I am going to ask that we don't take further comments. And the reason for that is we've had a thorough discussion. There will be ample opportunity, but we would like to move forward. Again, it's after 7. We've all been here since 4:32. We want to go home to our families too. But what's going to happen is we'll have discussion to have any additional questions to staff that can help us be more informed in entertaining a motion. We will ask that there's a motion on the table for or against before we start any substantive discussion. That's anyone saying why or why they wouldn't vote for something like this. The planning commission has to send a motion forward. That's our job. We either send a favorable motion or an unfavorable. We can send a favorable motion with specific things that we want staff and the county commission to look into. We can send an unfavorable recommendation with reasons. But just so you know, there's no way to send a hung jury forward off of this body. Okay. So with that, I'm going to close the public hearing at 7:09. And we'll open up any discussion from planning commissioners or Trish who have questions for staff clarifying anything that's come up this evening or anything that we have read into the law that needs clarification.
One of the things I was listening to on these comments is like, you know, we've set this 96 decibel limit and, you know, 92. So when I used to work in a business in the city, it's like my former boss, he bought a lot and he had to put up a wall, you know, because we're on a residential, we're on an area between a residential. To me, it seems like, you know, we have these properties in the county that are just starting to get valuable enough to develop, or they have, it seems like most of them on this map have businesses in the front, and that buffer zone is actually not being used right now. I guess, why wouldn't we just put, like, all businesses need to have a buffer zone?
Well,
So let me back that up. Like when I was working at, when my little former employer example, it was like, yeah, you just have to do this because we're a business and these are people that live over here. Like, it sucks to live next to a business that doesn't have a gate up. And, you know, it seems to me, it's almost like, you know, I hear people saying like, we're picking on OHV businesses. And I'm like, man, if I live, you know, in some of these places, I know, like, yeah, you buy a place and you know that there's a potential of commercial use next to it, but it seems like it almost should be a more broader thing where, like, yeah, we protect our residential areas from all noise. That's one of my things on here.
Noise is the main thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And then another thing I see on here is like that auto repair garage and what the Perriots were saying on that. I guess if I was to pass this, I would like to take out some of the dust proofing
Let's
surfaces.
hold those comments.
Okay,
until we have them.
sorry. Are we just asking the
This is
staff?
clarification for staff, and then we'll finish on this.
Okay, so clarification. The other thing I wanted to know, what was it, man? Okay, so when I'm looking at this map and it's like, it seems like all our commercial stuff is like right on the highway. Is there any place on this map that you couldn't put a Class B outfitter on that doesn't meet the highway thing? I'm like, oh, are these two little islands out here, are those the only ones?
Are you talking about for the overlay district?
Yeah, I'm like, okay, we can put OHV's businesses all along. There's not a place that doesn't meet that arterial, like, highway mandate. I feel like I've read this a couple times last night and I still do. I'm like, man, what, like, okay, we don't want our OHVs going through neighborhoods, right? Like, that's where a lot of people are having problems with what, like, keep them on the main roads. Okay, sand flats. I really hear you guys saying, like, yeah, that's a problem. What you were saying, like, yeah, but if you got all these diesel trucks, that's worse.
With big trailers,
Yeah.
whole car, line of cars.
So, so I kind of want to know, like, I'm looking at this map, I'm like, where is it? Which one of these is it, you know, I'm hearing people like, oh, it's all the properties, there's not a place to put these. I'm like, it seems to me like everything's on an arterial highway here.
Yeah, for our outfitter A through, well, all of them except for outfitter B, which is the one that is being proposed that it would be in an overlay. And the criteria, as it's written right now, would move those businesses, or would establish new businesses like that near the trailhead. So the fact that the public comment that was related to that criteria where it is somewhat conflicting, I think that is very concerning, and that's something we're gonna have to probably change
Yeah.
in the new version because it would make it impossible to locate them anywhere. And so I don't think that was the intention. I think that was just an oversight where it was, I think that the requirement for them to be located on an arterial should be omitted in that section. And the requirement for them just to be located near the trailheads should be the only requirement. I mean, that would be the one way to do it. But I mean.
Okay.
That is problematic though, for sure.
Okay, so what do you think the best way to clarify that is?
So the way that we can clarify that is if you wanted to make a motion, you could recommend in the motion that that be struck from
Okay.
the ordinance draft as written.
Uh-huh.
And if somebody else makes a motion that doesn't include that, you can suggest a motion to amend.
Yeah.
And that is how that can be addressed. And that's just the lovely Robert's rules, 18th century discussion. I would love to know, since these definitions that would be in the general code are not adopted, if this were hypothetically to be adopted as written or with minimal changes, which of the sections under F would apply going forward? Since we don't have those definitions today, would they all fall under A, or how would that be mitigated?
Yeah, that is a conundrum because we don't have our Article 10 update. It almost would have to happen simultaneously. So Article 10 did actually come to Planning Commission as a public hearing like a few months ago, but we didn't have all these definitions at that time included in the draft code. So I don't know if we would have to go back and have another public hearing on Article 10, or I would have to consult with the attorney on that.
I'm going to recommend before voting on any motion that we resolve that so that there is some fallback as written to address that, whether it's interim or long-standing discrepancy. And then considering if those definitions are adopted, then whatever is adopted in the actual section after it's drafted would be retroactively applied. So that way we can at least be very clear in what is or isn't being voted on this evening. So I'll ensure that that happens if we don't get to that in the initial motion. Any additional questions for staff?
Is the council wanting, like, I get the sense that the council wants something for us to give to them. I mean, can we table it and revise it, table it, and then vote on it again?
It would have to be a motion to table. If you, go ahead. Obi.
No, I, number one, he did ask the question. The question I did have was about the location of these things. I'm very tempted to table it only because ton of new comments, raise some questions that I can see, raise even more questions if I go through this entire document, having heard the testimony that we have. I do have to say, it's an odd thing to be here always at this table, because there are business owners, there are neighbors, they supply jobs, there are neighborhoods with people who live in them, and they hear noise, and they didn't expect people to be driving vehicles by them, or they didn't expect a kennel to go in next to them, and you want to try to ameliorate those neighbors. So all I should say is there's neighbors everywhere, and we are responsible in some ways, as best we can do for all of them. But if we do table this, does that motion have to come before a motion to vote on it? When should that motion be made?
Can move to, I would recommend that there was a motion to postpone. Postponement requires a specific date. Tabling is in 21 table.
Maybe next year. Well, they might be next year.
Well,
That's a
generally
question.
speaking, we close the public hearing after the first
Oh,
opportunity
we
for
already closed it.
discussion. I would say for now, I would recommend we keep the public hearing closed. If there is a motion to postpone or table, that doesn't mean people can't submit comments and questions and we can get further clarification from staff. And I would look to the county commission for direction on decisions on whether to open another public hearing. So that would be a suspension of our standard rules and bylaws. So any additional questions for staff, or if anyone is feeling open to making a motion, you don't have to vote for your own motion. It allows us to have a substantive discussion, and a move to postpone or a move to table does require a second and does require a vote as well. Okay.
If we postpone it, anybody with ideas about how long our next meeting is?
We only have one more meeting.
I would ask that we postpone it only to the next meeting so that we can ensure we maintain
As you
momentum
come
of
up.
the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we put, move to postpone, can we put in recommendations to the staff?
What I would, for the sake of simplicity, the motion to postpone could be very simple. And then in future considerations, we can be very clear with staff about what we're hoping to see or hear at the next meeting.
Well, I move to postpone.
Okay, is there a second?
And I'm assuming
postpone
that's to the next meeting?
Yes, to the next meeting.
I second that.
Okay, any further discussion?
I would like to say that, appreciate you guys' comments, but, keep in mind that, for the 20 people that we have here, we have a lot of citizens also that have complained a lot about noise. And, please use this time to add some really constructive, I've heard some really constructive things here. I was just talking today about oh man, auto shops, such essential services needed in here. So what I really heard was you felt surprised at this meeting. So use the next 2 weeks to formulate some good, well-balanced, thought out things so we can look at that. Okay.
And don't feel like you have to wait till the next meeting to bring this forward.
Yeah.
planning@grandcounty.net is the email where you can send any comments. Grand County Connects also has a comment field, and there's also pretty active participation by the planning and zoning department on Facebook. If you're on Facebook and Instagram, choose your poison. So lots of opportunity to participate. Any other comments? Steve, you still with us? Any other comments?
No, I'm still here. Thanks.
Thanks for hanging in there.
Sure thing.
It's awful.
I think this is the right decision to postpone. I think there's been a lot of good conversation. I also think this is a public process. We're all volunteers. We all live here too, and we're all doing our best too. And public attacks against individuals to try and sway the way people feel are often not the best way to move hearts and minds. And I think this shows that we listen. We're part of this community too. And I think this is the right move. Let's, any further discussion? Let's call a vote. All in favor of postponing the public hearing, not the public hearing, the votes on whether or not to adopt these changes to, I've lost my minutes because this looks different than it used to. Postponement to consider an ordinance to amend Article 3, 4, and 6 to establish noise mitigation measures and an overlay district for outfitter guide services and facilitators outfitter B. A motion to postpone until our next meeting. All in favor? Steve?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody, for attending. Thank you for your participation. And if you want to stick around, if you have any additional questions that you want staff to address, this is a great opportunity. We've got a little bit of business left to do, but it won't take us longer than about 10 minutes. So thank you all. All right, we will move on to future considerations. I've got a few things in my notes. I know something came up here. So we will only have one meeting in December. The second meeting is scheduled is December 26th. So that is not on our agenda. So we had a vote a few meetings ago about keeping the second and the fourth Mondays at 4:30 p.m. in this room. Could I ask you to make sure that county staff knows that as they're doing their calendaring for next year? We normally, I can't remember who it is that organizes that. I don't envy them.
Oh, right.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I mentioned that we're gonna try and do this workshop, but we want to get confirmation from participants. And then you wanted to talk briefly about the Nexus study.
Yeah, so We are definitely working against the clock with this housing requirement that we had posed several months ago. The housing study has been in process, and that's what we've been waiting on, getting the results from that. And we did get some preliminary results from the consultant, and I'm starting to share that and get some input and figure out how to proceed with an ordinance. But I hope to have that coming to you guys at the next meeting in a draft form. So maybe hopefully in a final-ish form.
When do we expect that report to be out of like draft form, or can we circulate that at all? How does that?
I
It's
don't
from the
know
consultant.
exactly. I will have to reach out to we had like a little committee set up of folks from the planning commission, some folks from the city too, who were kind of there to advise on their process that they did. And then also from the commission. So I think I did reach out to that committee with the preliminary results, and I just haven't gotten any response. And I don't know if it's just because it was just right over the holiday. And so I'm working on trying to figure out at what stage can we just post the study up on our website and get more feedback from the public.
So this is the BAE housing study,
Mhm.
and the punchline is we won't be able to. Okay, to say the punchline, I don't know, I just saw the draft. We won't be able to meet our workforce housing requirements based off of the growth, any expected level.
Oh, right.
So
Yeah,
we,
exactly.
that's the too long didn't read of that study.
And the main thing we're
some
waiting,
severe urgency.
it's like the actual percentage that we would be able to require based on the whole
Right.
build out of the entire, of the county based on, our zoning, our current zoning right now. So that was.
But the context behind any recommended percentage requirement of an assured housing policy is at any level of build out, Grand County is beyond its ability to support workforce needs.
Right.
So the time is now. The time is 20 years ago, but the time is now to act with urgency. To take care of our people. Okay. Any other future considerations?
So this would be time to talk about that future considerations in the postpone
Yes.
thing. Yeah, so, I saw that it's like, feeling discrimination. I'm like, well, I just think it's a no brainer to have any separation between residential and commercial. You could almost mitigate this whole thing by being like, yeah, every business has to do it. And so if you take that, maybe people wouldn't feel so targeted. I live behind City Market. They don't have a fence up, and I hear their dumpster at 2 a.m. It's kind of like, well, if it's an OHV place or if it's a supermarket, to me, it's all, it's all noise. And so no matter if it's, a bookstore. So I'm almost like, put that, maybe we should just shift the whole conversation into that. And I definitely am worried about OHVs, it's a tourism thing, and that's not local serving. I saw the automotive thing being like, yeah, that's something that we should really be light on for restrictions, kind of thing as well. Maybe, yeah, I don't know. I know dust and stuff is an issue, but I'm like, also paving a whole, I know Bryson's garage, it's like, man.
Well, we're not asking them to pay.
Yeah, no, I know, but just that idea of something is kind of essential. I don't know. What do you guys think?
No, I am following with what you're saying there, especially on the latter half, Aaron, of what you're saying about those encumbrances to business, because I think I heard maybe 3 people speak directly to it, that when you start putting in these regulations, it is going to price out the little person. And then the bigger companies are going to come in. And so I see that especially with, to use the Marriott example again, if they are forced to move and they have to, put rock down or pave, a next property that they might move to, that could right there be the end of their business. Or it puts them in a spot where, since they're renting, their landlord can totally extort them with the understanding of, you got nowhere else to go. Not saying that would be the case, but we know that business always isn't in good faith. And so I wonder for staff if there's any way that if there's any way to like have almost this extension type grandfather, where if they did have to move to a different location, but I know that's, it's land use, so it's not tied to land, but I just wonder if there's some sort of option there, because I get what we're wanting. What seems to me to be the spirit of this is, let's control noise, especially by preventing new noisy industry or business to come in. But doing that through the land use code as we're presently doing it, I mean, it's terrifying for those other businesses that would be grandfathered in. If their situation never changes, that's fine. It's a moot point. But I think, I think that'd be.
I'm so sorry. Steve, I think you have good points, and I'm gonna.
Is the NyQuil kicking in? No, just kidding.
No,
Just kidding. Hopefully that was coherent.
It was coherent. I'm going to hold still to the consistent pattern that we have substantive discussions with a motion on the table one way or another as it relates to an ordinance. So I think there are questions we would like staff to answer or clarify. There are parts in the code as drafted that seem like it needs more precision. That I think is sufficient, but anything that is weighing the options within individual uses within the code, I think let's just hold that into our next meeting.
Sure, yeah, that sounds great.
Do you mean that though, in terms of if I go through this and I write a note to staff saying, here's some changes I'd like to see, is that getting too substantive?
No, it's more the discussion.
Yeah, I
Getting the
understand,
history
because
of
that's,
that,
yes, we are really in a meeting almost.
More to how we would vote individually.
Got it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for clarifying. It's a
Good,
Socratic
good.
method at its best.
Right.
Okay, did anyone else have any directions to staff related to, there are definitions that are missing. I don't feel comfortable, with the fact that there are definitions in here that are not called out, that are not adopted yet, or even not specified. The definition of business producing noise or noisy business seems like it needs to be addressed as well. Also, again, not specific to recommended changes, but I do think we need to better understand the thinking behind the word shall in placing an overlay requirement on a trailhead when we have no trailheads adjacent to arterial roads. That seems
Contradictory for sure.
So I think that needs to be addressed. Any further conversation, further future discussion?
The housing fair, that's next Monday, right? Are we having like a little booth or anything?
Lisa and I think are, the final presentation.
Yeah, I was gonna talk to you about that. Yeah, we were gonna just be there to do, on that final segment to talk about what county's efforts are, what past efforts, what we're looking at in the future.
What has been done.
And you're welcome to be there.
Oh,
to
yeah.
chime in and be represented.
Yeah, I just felt kind of bad. Like they brought that up and I was like, I felt like there was a disconnect. I'm like, I didn't even know what it was. Caitlin does housing stuff and I was like, oh, sorry, I don't know. I don't have any questions except where am I?
I would agree. There was no context for the table. I looked at the table and said, seems like it's heavy on housing, but what's it doing right there?
Yeah, I just felt like I should know more about it. And that housing open house, I'm like, I'm gonna,
Do we need to notice that as a public meeting, since there will likely be a quorum of planning commissioners and county commissioners?
That's a good idea.
No, 24 hours, that's all.
Yeah.
Just to be cautious.
Yep, we can do that.
That way we can say hello.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay. With that
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Feel better, Steve.
Thanks.
Google NyQuil chicken. NyQuil chicken.
All right, I'll check it out. Bye, everyone.